In a room bathed in the soft, artificial light of evening, a figure sits, surrounded by the quiet hum of success. The lines of the furniture are clean, the surfaces uncluttered, the view from the window a glittering tapestry of a city that never sleeps. By all external measures, this is a life of accomplishment, a destination reached. There is a phone in hand, its screen, a portal to 1,000 other lives, each one curated to display a perfect moment, a victory, a flawless smile. And with every scroll, the silence in the room grows heavier. The space between the person and the life they have built widens into a quiet chasm. This feeling, this invisible weight, is not sadness, not exactly. It is a profound and unsettling emptiness, a spiritual exhaustion that no amount of comfort or distraction can soothe. It is the quiet ache of a life spent running, accumulating, achieving, only to arrive at the summit and find the air too thin to breathe. This is the suffering of the modern age. It is not always the sharp, obvious pain of hunger or physical hardship, but a more subtle, pervasive discontent. It is the low hum of anxiety that underlies our days, the pressure to be more, to do more, to have more. It is the loneliness we feel in a crowd, the disconnection we feel while being more connected than ever before. We chase fleeting pleasures, hoping they will fill the void, but the satisfaction is temporary, a brief wave that quickly recedes, leaving the same barren shore behind. We have become masters of the outer world, yet we remain strangers to our own inner landscape. We have learned how to build empires, but have forgotten how to build a sanctuary within our own minds. But what if this feeling is not a personal failure? What if it is not a sign that you are broken, but a sign that you are beginning to awaken? This very ache of discontent, this sense that there must be something more, is a question that humanity has asked for thousands of years. And for just as long, there has been a path, a body of wisdom that does not offer an escape from this reality, but a way to go directly through it. It is not a religion that demands blind faith, but a practical science of the mind, a set of tools for navigating the entirety of the human experience. It is the wisdom of Buddhism, which begins not with a promise of heaven, but with a courageous willingness to look directly at the nature of our own suffering. It suggests that the peace we desperately seek is not found by changing our circumstances, but by changing our relationship to them. It is a journey inward, to find a peace that cannot be given and cannot be taken away. To begin a journey, one must first know where they are standing. The path we are exploring does not begin with a comforting promise or a sweet platitude. It begins with a statement of profound and unnerving clarity, a truth that many of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid. It is the first of what are called the Four Noble Truths, the very foundation of the Buddha's teaching. And this first truth is simply this: there is suffering. In the ancient Pali language, the word is dukkha. Now, hearing this, the modern mind might recoil. It sounds pessimistic, even morbid. We are taught to be positive, to look on the bright side, to focus on happiness. The idea of centering a path to peace on the reality of suffering seems counterintuitive, like trying to cure an illness by staring at the wound. But this is a misunderstanding, born from a limitation in our language. The word dukkha does not just mean pain or misery in the way we usually think of it. It is a much richer, more subtle, and more pervasive concept. To translate it merely as suffering is like describing the entire ocean as being wet. It's true, but it misses the vastness, the depth, the currents, and the profound mystery of it all. Dukkha can be understood in at least 3 layers. The first is the most obvious: dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the pain that we all recognize immediately, the pain of the body and the pain of the mind. It is sickness, injury, and the inevitable process of aging. It is the grief we feel when we lose someone we love, the sting of being rejected, the frustration of plans gone awry, the despair of heartbreak. This form of dukkha is universal and undeniable. It is the sharp, unavoidable pain of human existence, the raw data of life that no amount of positive thinking can erase. We all experience it, regardless of our wealth, our status, or our beliefs. It is the common ground of our shared humanity. The second layer is more subtle. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that arises because even our happiness is temporary. Think of a perfect, beautiful day, a moment of pure joy with people you love. Even within that moment, if we are paying close enough attention, we might feel a subtle, underlying tension, a quiet fear that this moment will end, and it will. The vacation concludes. The delicious meal is finished. The laughter fades. The pleasure we desperately cling to is as impermanent as the pain we try to push away. This form of suffering comes from our resistance to the fundamental law of the universe, the law of impermanence. We suffer because we try to build a permanent home on shifting sands. We crave stability in a world whose very nature is to flow and to change. This is the source of so much of our modern anxiety, the desperate chase for the next promotion, the next purchase, the next experience, believing that this time the happiness will stick. But it never does, not permanently. And this constant cycle of chasing and losing is a deep form of dukkha. The third and most profound layer is sankhara dukkha. This is the suffering of conditioned existence itself. It is the background hum of unsatisfactoriness that pervades our lives, so constant that we often don't even notice it. It is the feeling of being a separate, vulnerable self in a vast, uncontrollable universe. It is the subtle friction of everyday life, the feeling that things are just slightly off, that we are not quite whole. It is the stress of having to maintain this identity, this me, with all its preferences, fears, and ambitions. It is the deep, existential angst that can surface in quiet moments. The feeling of being a wheel that is not perfectly centered on its axle, creating a subtle wobble and friction with every turn. This is the invisible weight we spoke of earlier. It is not caused by a specific bad event or the loss of a good one. It is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, conditioned experience. To acknowledge dukkha in all its forms is not to be a pessimist. It is to be a realist. A doctor cannot prescribe a cure until they have made an honest and thorough diagnosis. Denying the symptom does not heal the disease. In the same way, the first step on any authentic spiritual path is to have the courage to look at our condition honestly, without flinching. It is an act of supreme kindness to ourselves to finally stop pretending that everything is fine when we feel that subtle or not so subtle ache of dukkha. This is where one of the most practical teachings in all of Buddhism comes to our aid, the parable of the second arrow. The teaching says that in life, we are all shot by an arrow. This first arrow is unavoidable. It is dukkha dukkha. It is the illness, the hurtful word, the financial loss, the accident. It is the raw objective event that causes pain, and that pain is real. The path does not promise a life free from first arrows. That would be a fantasy. The real teaching, the real possibility for freedom, lies in what happens next. For most of us, as soon as we are struck by the first arrow, we immediately shoot ourselves with a second one. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the blame, the resentment, the self-pity, the catastrophizing. The first arrow is the pain of a headache. The second arrow is the thought, why do I always get headaches? This is going to ruin my whole day. What if it's a brain tumor? This is just my luck. Nothing ever goes right for me. The first arrow is the sharp sting of criticism from a colleague. The pain is real. The second arrow is the obsessive loop of thoughts that follows. They must think I'm an idiot. I'm probably going to lose my job. I've failed. I'm not good enough. The first arrow delivers the pain. The second arrow delivers the suffering. The first arrow is physical or emotional. The second arrow is purely mental, and it is the one that causes the most damage. It is the one that can poison our minds for days, weeks, even years, long after the initial pain of the first arrow has subsided. We are the archer of that second arrow. We inflict this extra layer of suffering upon ourselves, often without even realizing we are doing it. The practice, then, is not about building a shield to block all first arrows. That is impossible. The practice is to develop the awareness, the mindfulness, to notice the space between the first arrow striking and our impulse to fire the second. In that space, there is freedom. In that space, we can choose a different response. We can choose to simply tend to the wound of the first arrow with compassion and care, without adding the poison of judgment and fear. We can learn to experience pain without creating suffering. To accept the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha, is to finally put down our bow and arrow. It is to see that the constant struggle against the nature of reality is exhausting and futile. It is to realize that the source of our deepest torment is not what life does to us, but what we do to ourselves in response. It is a moment of profound relief, a letting go of a burden we never even knew we were carrying. It is the beginning of wisdom. By daring to look at our discontent, we take the first, most crucial step toward peace. And it naturally brings us to the next essential question. If we are the ones firing this second arrow, if we are the ones perpetuating our own suffering, then what is the force within us, the deep-seated mechanism that compels us to do so? What is the origin of this self-inflicted wound? This is the investigation of the second noble truth, the cause of our discontent. Having looked unflinchingly at the diagnosis of our condition, the universal reality of dukkha, we now turn from the symptom to its cause. A wise physician does not stop at identifying the fever. They seek the source of the infection. In this same way, the Buddha's second great discovery, the second noble truth, points directly to the origin of our suffering. The cause, he said, is an endless, driving thirst. In the ancient texts, this is called tanha. This word, tanha, is often translated as craving or desire, but like dukkha, its meaning is far deeper. It is not the simple, wholesome desire to eat when you are hungry or to sleep when you are tired. Tanha is a thirst that can never be truly quenched. It is a deep, instinctual grasping, a clinging, a relentless wanting and unwanting that fuels the engine of our discontent. It is the very tension that pulls the string of the bow, making us ready to fire that second arrow at the slightest provocation. This thirst is not a single entity. It manifests in three primary forms, three invisible hungers that dictate so much of our inner lives. The first and most familiar is the thirst for sense pleasures, or kama-tanha. This is the craving for things that delight our six senses, the taste of delicious food, the sight of a beautiful sunset or an attractive person, the sound of enchanting music, the feeling of luxurious fabric on our skin, the smell of rain on dry earth. It even includes the craving for pleasant thoughts and ideas. There is nothing inherently wrong with pleasure. The path of wisdom is not about denying ourselves simple joys. The problem lies not in the experience, but in the clinging to the experience. We want to hold on to it, to make it last, to repeat it. When the pleasure fades, as it always must, we feel a sense of loss and immediately begin seeking the next hit. This is the logic of addiction, and in a subtle way, we are all addicted to pleasant sensations. Our modern world is a temple built to this thirst. Every advertisement, every streaming service, every perfectly crafted meal on social media is designed to stimulate and amplify our kama-tanha, promising a satisfaction that is, by its very nature, as fleeting as a bubble on a stream. The second thirst is more subtle and perhaps more powerful. It is the thirst to be, to become, to exist in a certain way. This is bhavatanya. This is the craving at the heart of the ego. It is the deep, insatiable desire to be someone, to be successful, to be respected, to be loved, to be seen as intelligent or spiritual or attractive. It is the engine behind our relentless ambition, our desire for status, fame, and power. It is the force that has us constantly curating our lives, both online and off, to project a certain image, to build and maintain a personal brand. This thirst whispers to us that we are not enough as we are, that our happiness lies in becoming a future, better version of ourselves. We are constantly striving, reaching, becoming, but never simply and peacefully being. Social media is the ultimate amplifier of bhavatanha. We scroll through endless galleries of other people's becoming their new homes, their perfect families, their exotic travel sand. It fuels our own sense of lack, our own desperate thirst to become something more, something else. We are grasping at an identity, a solid and permanent self, in a world where everything is in flux. The third thirst seems like the opposite of the second, but it is merely the other side of the same coin. It is the thirst for non-existence, the craving to get rid of something. This is vibhavatana. This is the energy of aversion, of pushing away. It is the desperate wish for our anxiety to disappear, for our physical pain to cease, for that annoying person at work to just go away. It is the clenching in our stomach when we are confronted with something we don't like, the internal scream of, "I don't want this." When we are trapped in regret about the past, we are in the grip of vibhavatanha, wishing to annihilate a piece of our own history. When we feel shame or self-hatred, we are experiencing a thirst for our own perceived flaws to not exist. This wanting to get rid of is just as forceful and creates just as much tension and suffering as wanting to possess. Whether we are pulling something toward us or pushing it away, our mind is in a state of struggle, of conflict with reality. And this conflict, this friction, is dukkha. To see these three thirsts at work within us is to understand the mechanics of our own suffering. They reveal that our discontent is not random. It is generated by a predictable, almost mechanical process. And in Buddhist cosmology, there is a powerful and unsettling metaphor for a mind completely consumed by this process, the realm of the hungry ghosts. These beings, known as pretas, are said to inhabit a realm of perpetual, agonizing thirst. They are depicted with enormous, distended bellies, symbolizing their vast and all-consuming desires. Their hunger is monumental, their need is endless, but their throats are tight and their mouths are as small as the eye of a needle. No matter how much they find to consume, they can never take in enough to even begin to fill the aching void of their bellies. They are forever tormented, forever starving, forever reaching for a satisfaction that their very nature makes impossible. This is not just an ancient myth. It is a profound psychological portrait of the human mind in the grip of tanhana. When we are driven by unchecked craving, we are living in the hungry ghost realm. We chase after more money, more success, more followers, more validation, thinking that the next acquisition will finally be the one to make us feel full, to make us feel whole. We get the promotion, and for a day or two, we feel a sense of satisfaction. But almost immediately, the empty feeling returns, and our gaze shifts to the next, higher position. We buy the new device, and for a week, it brings us a flicker of joy. But soon it becomes just another object, and our desire is already projected onto the next model. We are the hungry ghost, with the giant belly of our wanting and the tiny mouth of our momentary satisfaction. We live in a state of perpetual insufficiency, a self-inflicted poverty in the midst of potential abundance. This diagnosis is not meant to inspire despair, but to inspire clarity. Seeing the nature of tanha is the key to our own liberation. It shows us that the problem is not the world. The world will always offer things to crave and things to resist. The problem is the thirst itself. The suffering is not inherent in the objects of our desire, but in the act of clinging and grasping. The second noble truth does not say that you must never again feel desire. It says that the root of suffering is the clinging, the grasping, the feverish thirst that turns life from a flowing river into a battlefield of wanting and not wanting. When we understand this, truly understand it, our entire orientation shifts. We begin to see that the second arrow is not just a bad habit, it is a direct expression of tanha. We fire it because a painful event threatens our thirst to feel good, kamatanya, or our thirst to be seen as competent, bhavatanya, or because it represents a feeling we desperately want to get rid of, vibhavatana. The craving is the cause, the second arrow is the effect. This realization naturally leads to a deeper, more fundamental question. This immense craving, this powerful thirst that defines so much of our experience, seems to come from a central core. It feels personal. It feels like there is an I who is hungry, an I who is thirsty, an I who is suffering. But what is this I? What is this self that feels so solid, so continuous, and so needy? To find the ultimate freedom from suffering, we must turn our investigative lens upon the craver itself. We must ask the most radical question of all: is the one who suffers even real? We have journeyed to a critical vantage point. We have looked at the landscape of our lives and acknowledged the universal territory of dukkha, our deep and persistent unsatisfactoriness. We have followed the tracks back from that territory to find their source, a powerful, driving thirst called tanha, the craving that keeps us wanting, resisting, and perpetually off balance. Now, we must ask the most intimate question of all: who is this I that suffers? Who is this I that craves? We feel it so strongly, this sense of being a distinct self, a protagonist at the very center of our own universe. It feels like the most real thing in the world. And yet, the third great insight on this path, perhaps the most radical and challenging of all, asks us to question this very foundation. This is the teaching of anatta, or no self. This teaching does not claim that you do not exist. You are clearly here, hearing these words, thinking these thoughts. Anatta is not a doctrine of annihilation. Rather, it is an invitation to investigate the nature of your existence more deeply. It suggests that what we take to be a solid, stable, continuous self is, upon closer inspection, something far more fluid, more mysterious, and ultimately more free. It posits that there is no permanent, unchanging soul or ego entity residing somewhere inside our body and mind, like a pilot in a machine. Let us conduct this investigation for ourselves, right now. Let us try to find this self. Where is it? The most obvious place to look is the body. Is your body the you? It seems so, at first. But your body is in a constant state of flux. The cells that compose it today are not the same cells that composed it 7 years ago. Your body ages. It gets sick and it recovers. It feels strong and it feels weak. You can lose a limb and you are still you. So the self cannot be equated with the body, which is an ever-changing biological process. The body is something you have, not something you are. So, if not the body, perhaps the self is our feelings. Is I my joy, my sadness, my anger, my peace? This is also untenable. Feelings are notoriously fickle. They arise, they stay for a while, and they vanish, like clouds passing through the sky. If you were your anger, you would cease to exist when the anger fades. If you were your joy, you would be a different person entirely when sadness visits. Our feelings are transient weather patterns moving through us. They happen to us, but they are not the core of us. What about our thoughts? Surely, the thinking mind is the seat of the self. But are you your thoughts? Think about the nature of thought. Thoughts appear in the mind, often unbidden. They are chaotic, contradictory, and incessant. There are noble thoughts and petty thoughts, brilliant thoughts and foolish thoughts. If you were your thoughts, which one would you be? The one from this morning or the one from 5 minutes ago? Like feelings, thoughts are events that happen within consciousness. We can learn to observe our thoughts, which implies that we are the observer, not the thoughts themselves. Perhaps then, the self is our perceptions, the labels we put on the world through our senses, or our beliefs, our memories, our personality traits. But all of these are also subject to change. We can change our beliefs. Our memories can be faulty. Our personality shifts with time and circumstance. Each of these components is impermanent. So how can a collection of impermanent things create a permanent self? The Buddha's analysis was that what we call the self is a temporary coalition of 5 processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are the body, form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, which includes thoughts, habits and volitions, and consciousness itself. There is no I outside of these processes. The I is simply the name we give to the way these 5 processes interact from moment to moment. The self is not a noun, it is a verb. It is a continuous event, a flowing river of experience, not a solid, static stone within that river. There is a wonderful ancient story that illustrates this with perfect clarity. It comes from a text called The Questions of King Milinda. The story tells of a debate between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and a Greek king who ruled a part of India more than 2,000 years ago. The king, a man of sharp intellect, challenges Nagasena on this very point of no self. He asks for Nagasena's name, and the sage replies that Nagasena is just a convenient designation, a name for a collection of parts, but that no permanent person can be found. The king is unconvinced. He points to the chariot he arrived in and asks, "What is this chariot?" Nagasena begins a calm deconstruction. "Your Majesty, is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," the king replies. Nagasena continues, "Are the wheels the chariot? Is the axle, the frame, the reins, the yoke?" To each question, the king must answer no. Then Nagasena asks, "Are all of these parts taken together the chariot?" "No, sir," the king admits. "Is there something else outside of these parts, which is the chariot?" The king is forced to say no. Nagasena then delivers his conclusion. "Your Majesty, you have said that the chariot is not any of its individual parts, nor is it the collection of parts, nor is it something separate from the parts. The word chariot is simply a name, a convention we use to refer to the way these parts are assembled and function together. It has no independent, essential reality of its own." He then gently turns the lesson back to himself. In just the same way, Nagasena is a conventional name for this collection of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. When you investigate them thoroughly, you will find no permanent, unchanging self residing within them. This insight is profoundly liberating. If there is no solid, unchanging self, then what is this thing we call our ego? The ego can be seen as a kind of hard-working manager, a ghost in the machine whose job is to create and defend the story of a solid self. It is the ego that draws a thick line between me and the rest of the world. It is the ego that feels personally attacked when our opinions are challenged. It is the ego that drives the thirst to become something better, bhava tanha, because its very existence depends on this project of self-improvement and self-validation. And this is an utterly exhausting, full-time job. The ego is in a constant state of anxiety, guarding a fortress that doesn't actually exist. To see through this illusion is not to become a non-entity. It is to be freed from the immense, lifelong burden of defending this fragile, fabricated identity. When you truly grasp the fluid, process nature of your being, you can hold your opinions more lightly. You can experience criticism without feeling annihilated. You can feel a deeper empathy and connection with others, because the artificial wall between self and other becomes porous and transparent. You see that other people are also flowing processes, driven by their own causes and conditions. Suffering needs a solid place to land. It needs a victim. It needs an I who is being wronged. Craving needs a solid I to be the one who wants, the one who is lacking. When the solidity of this I is seen through, the entire architecture of suffering begins to lose its foundation. The hungry ghost, who felt so real and so solid in its neediness, is revealed to be just that, a ghost, a phantom created by a misunderstanding. We have now seen that the reality of our condition is dukkha, its cause is tanha, and the entity that craves and suffers is anatta, a fluid process rather than a fixed thing. This understanding of the observer naturally leads us to question the observed. If the self is a flowing river, what is the nature of the world that this river flows through? This brings us to the third and final of the great characteristics of existence, the one that ties everything together, the universal law of impermanence. We have journeyed through the foundational truths of our inner world. We began by courageously acknowledging the existence of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of conditioned life. We then identified its source as tanha, the relentless thirst for things to be other than they are. And most recently, we investigated the very nature of the one who suffers and craves, discovering not a solid, fixed self, but a fluid, flowing process called anatta. Now, we arrive at the third and final of the great characteristics of existence, the universal law that weaves the other two together into a coherent whole. This is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. The law of impermanence is simple, profound, and absolute. It states that everything that comes into being is subject to change and dissolution. Nothing is static. Nothing is permanent. Everything is in a state of flux. This is not a belief to be adopted, but a reality to be observed. It is as fundamental to our universe as the law of gravity. We see it everywhere we look. We see it in the grand cosmic dance, as stars are born from nebulae and eventually collapse into dust, their light traveling for eons to reach our eyes, a message from a past that is already gone. We see it in the turning of the seasons, the slow, patient erosion of mountains, the way a river ceaselessly carves a new path through the landscape. The mighty oak tree in the field was once a small, vulnerable acorn, and one day it will return to the soil from which it came. The very ground beneath our feet is a testament to this constant creative and destructive flow. This law is not just an external phenomenon, it is the most intimate truth of our own lives. Our bodies are a living demonstration of anicca. From the moment of conception, they are in a continuous process of growth, decay, and change. We are born, we grow, we reach a peak, and we begin the slow decline into old age and, eventually, death. Our breath itself is a perfect teaching in impermanence. Each inhalation a birth, each exhalation a small death, a continuous cycle that sustains our life from one moment to the next. Even more immediate is the impermanence of our own minds. Consider your inner world. A thought appears, seemingly from nowhere. It lingers for a moment, and then it is gone, replaced by another. An emotion, perhaps a wave of intense anger or a surge of profound joy, rises within you, crests, and then inevitably subsides. Our moods, our ideas, our opinions, our desire, all of it, is in constant motion. Our mind is not a solid object. It is a river of experience, a ceaseless flow of mental events. To sit quietly for even 5 minutes is to witness a dramatic and irrefutable display of the law of anicca. If this law is so universal and so obvious, why does it cause us so much trouble? The answer is crucial. Impermanence itself is not suffering. A changing world is not inherently a problem. The suffering arises from our resistance to this fundamental law. This resistance is fueled by tanha, our thirst and craving. We try to stand in the middle of the river of life and command it to stop flowing. We grasp at the pleasant moments, the feelings of joy, love, and success, and we try to build a permanent fortress around them. We cling to our youth, our health, our relationships, as if we could freeze them in time. And when they inevitably change, when the joy fades, when our health falters, when a relationship ends, we experience pain. This is the suffering of change, viparinama dukkha. It is the friction created when our desire for permanence collides with the reality of impermanence. On the other side of the coin, we desperately try to build dams to block the unpleasant experiences. We push away our fear, our grief, our shame, our boredom. We resist difficult situations and painful emotions, believing that if we fight them hard enough, we can make them go away. But this resistance is a struggle against the very nature of reality. It is like trying to hold back the tide. It creates immense tension, anxiety, and exhaustion. The more we fight the flow, the more we suffer. The problem is not the changing nature of life. The problem is our futile war against it. There is a timeless story, often associated with Zen and Taoist wisdom, that perfectly illustrates the wisdom of living in harmony with impermanence. It is the story of an old farmer and his horse. One day, the farmer's only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "What terrible luck! Your only horse is gone." The old farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks later, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate. "What incredible good luck!" they exclaimed. "You are a rich man now." The farmer calmly replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The following week, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "What awful bad luck! Your son, your only help, is now crippled." The farmer looked at them and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A short time later, the emperor's army came to the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a brutal war from which few were expected to return. When they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they passed him by. The neighbors, whose own sons had been taken, came to the farmer with tears in their eyes. "You were right," they said. "Your son was spared. It was truly good luck." And the farmer, looking out over his fields, simply said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The farmer's profound peace did not come from having good things happen to him. It came from his deep, intuitive understanding of anicca. He understood that life is an unpredictable, interconnected flow of events, and that our labels of good and bad are just premature judgments based on a very limited perspective. He did not cling to his gains or despair over his losses. He simply met each moment as it was, with an open, accepting, and spacious mind. He was not at war with the river. He had learned to float. Embracing the truth of impermanence is not a morbid or pessimistic act. It is the key to unlocking two of life's greatest treasures, gratitude and resilience. When we know that nothing lasts forever, we begin to cherish the present moment. We don't take our health, our loved ones, or a simple moment of peace for granted. Each experience becomes more precious because of its fleeting nature. This is the source of profound gratitude. And in times of great difficulty, the wisdom of anicca is a powerful medicine. When we are lost in grief, fear, or despair, this truth is a quiet, steady voice that reminds us, this too shall pass. It is not a denial of our pain, but an assurance that no condition is permanent. No storm lasts forever. This understanding gives us the strength to endure, the resilience to bend without breaking, and the hope that the clouds will eventually part. We have now explored the three fundamental characteristics of existence: the reality of dukkha, the illusion of anatta, and the law of anicca. We have the philosophical map. We understand the nature of the terrain. The next logical step is to turn our attention to the vehicle we are using to travel through it. We must look at the wild, chaotic, and brilliant processor of all this experience, the mind itself. What is its habitual nature, and how, in this modern age, has it become so restless? We must now face the challenge of what the masters call the monkey mind. Having laid the philosophical foundation, having surveyed the very laws of existence, we now arrive at the most practical and intimate part of our journey. We turn away from the grand concepts of dukkha, anatta, and anicca, and we bring our attention to the very place where these truths are experienced, our own mind. For it is here, in this inner laboratory, that suffering is either created or calmed. It is here that we are either a slave to our reactions or the master of our responses. To understand how to work with our reality, we must first understand the nature of the tool we are working with. And for this, the ancient teachers of wisdom offered a powerful and enduring metaphor. They said that the untrained mind is like a monkey. Imagine a monkey in a great forest. It never stays still for more than a moment. It is agitated, restless, and impulsive. It swings from one branch to another, grabbing a piece of fruit here, chattering loudly there, scratching itself, and then instantly leaping to a completely different tree. It is driven by whim, by sudden urges, by a constant need for stimulation. This, the masters said, is a perfect image of the ordinary human mind. It is a monkey mind. It restlessly swings from thought to thought, from memory to fantasy, from judgment to desire, never content to simply be where it is. The monkey mind has two favorite destinations, two branches to which it returns again and again. The first is the past. It loves to swing back into the thickets of memory, replaying old conversations, reliving past glories, or, more often, picking at the scabs of old wounds. It obsesses over what we should have said, what we could have done differently. It gets lost in spirals of regret, shame, and nostalgia. When the mind is clinging to the branches of the past, we are living in a world that no longer exists. We are ghosts in our own lives, haunted by stories that are over, unable to be present for the life that is happening right now. Its other favorite destination is the future, perhaps even more than the past. The monkey mind loves to leap ahead into the branches of what might be. It spins elaborate fantasies of future success and happiness. It rehearses conversations that may never take place. Most of all, it worries. It frets about paying the bills, about what others think of us, about our health, about the state of the world. It creates detailed scenarios of disaster, playing out 1,000 tragedies that will likely never come to pass. When the mind is lost in the future, we are living in a fantasy. We are sacrificing the tangible reality of the present moment for a world of pure speculation. And this is the very definition of anxiety. Even when the monkey is not lost in the past or the future, it is rarely quiet. It provides a constant, chattering narration to our experience. As we walk down the street, it says, "I like that car. I don't like that person's jacket. It's too hot today. I'm bored. I wonder what's for dinner." This incessant inner commentary acts as a filter, a veil between us and the direct experience of life. We don't just feel the sun on our skin. We think, "Oh, the sun feels nice, but I hope I don't get a sunburn." We don't just taste our food. We are already critiquing it and thinking about our next meal. The monkey's chatter prevents us from ever truly arriving in our own lives. This has been the condition of the human mind for millennia, but we, in the modern world, have done something unprecedented. We have taken this already restless monkey, and we have built for it a new kind of cage. It is a digital cage, filled with an infinite supply of shiny objects, loud noises, and addictive treats. Instead of taming the monkey, we have engineered an environment that seems perfectly designed to drive it into a state of perpetual, hyperactive frenzy. The primary instrument of this cage is the device most of us carry in our pockets. The smartphone is a marvel of technology, but it is also a tool perfectly engineered to cater to the monkey's every whim. Consider the notification. Every ping, every buzz, every badge that appears on our screen is like someone throwing a new, irresistible banana to the monkey. It yanks our attention away from whatever we are doing, whether it is important work, a conversation with a loved one, or a simple moment of quiet, and trains our brain to exist in a state of constant partial attention. We are conditioning ourselves to be interrupted. Then there is the phenomenon of the infinite scroll. Our social media feeds, news sites, and video platforms are designed without a bottom. There is no natural endpoint, no moment to pause and reflect. It is an endless supply of novel branches for the monkey to swing to, each one promising a little hit of dopamine, a little jolt of outrage, or a little glimpse of a more exciting life. This cultivates a deep and insatiable hunger for more stimulation, preventing us from ever feeling content with what is right here, right now. We mistake this constant consumption of information for being engaged with the world, when in fact, it is a profound form of disengagement from our own direct experience. Let us walk through a day in the life of this modern, digitally agitated monkey. The day begins not with a gentle awakening, but with the shrill call of the phone's alarm. The very first act, before our feet even touch the floor, is to turn off the alarm and immediately check the notifications that have accumulated overnight. We are instantly flooded with emails from work, breaking news, headlines filled with alarm, and the curated highlight reels of other people's lives on social media. Before we have even taken a single conscious breath, the monkey mind is already agitated, comparing, worrying, and craving. The workday begins. We sit down at a computer with the intention of focusing on a single, important task, but our screen is a constellation of distractions. A dozen tabs are open in our web browser. An email pops up, and the monkey leaps to it. A chat message from a colleague demands an immediate response. We think, I'll just take a quick 2-minute break, which turns into 20 minutes of scrolling through a newsfeed. Our attention is not a steady beam of light. It is a broken strobe, flashing frantically from one thing to another. We end the day feeling exhausted and unproductive, having been busy all day but accomplishing very little of substance. In the evening, we seek to relax. We turn on the television to watch a movie, but the phone is still in our hand. We are in two realities at once, watching a story unfold on the large screen, while simultaneously scrolling through a different set of stories on the small one. We are neither here nor there. Our mind is saturated with input, but starved of genuine presence and rest. Finally, we go to bed. We turn off the lights, but the mind does not turn off with them. Having been trained all day to leap and chatter, it does not know how to be still. It replays the day's anxieties, rehearses tomorrow's challenges, and churns with a restless energy. We might even reach for the phone one last time, its blue light disrupting our natural sleep rhythms, ensuring that the cycle of agitation will begin anew tomorrow. We are left with a profound sense of exhaustion, a feeling of having been busy running all day without ever having moved, a life rich in information but poor in meaning. This is not a criticism or a judgment. It is a diagnosis of our collective condition. We are not weak-willed or broken. We are simply living in an environment that has become weaponized against our own attention. The first and most crucial step is simply to see this process clearly, to notice, without blaming ourselves, when the monkey mind has been hooked, to see it swing to a worry about the future, to see it get lost in a memory from the past, to feel the compulsive urge to check the phone for no reason at all. This awareness, this simple act of noticing, is itself a moment of profound power and clarity. It is the beginning of reclaiming our own mind, but it naturally leads to the next question. If this frantic, endless swinging is the source of our inner chaos, what is the alternative? Is there a way to gently, patiently, and compassionately invite the monkey to come down from the branches? Is it possible to find a place of stillness, a quiet clearing in the jungle of the mind, where we can finally rest? Fortunately, there is. An ancient practice, a timeless technology of the mind, has been preserved for thousands of years for exactly this purpose. It is the art of learning to be still. It is the practice of meditation. Having diagnosed the restless, agitated state of our monkey mind, perpetually swung between past and future, and relentlessly overstimulated by our digital world, we are left with a critical question. What can be done? Is there an antidote to this inner chaos? Is stillness even possible in an age of endless noise? The answer, preserved for over 2.5 millennia, is a resounding yes. The remedy is a practice, a form of mental training so simple it can seem radical. It is the practice of meditation. When we hear the word meditation, our minds may conjure up a host of images: saffron, robed monks in remote Himalayan caves, complex rituals, or esoteric states of bliss. But at its core, meditation is something far more practical, accessible, and essential. It is the art of stillness. It is the simple, courageous act of sitting down and choosing to be with ourselves, just as we are. It is not about becoming someone different, but about finally and fully meeting the person we already are, beneath the endless chatter of the monkey mind. Before we explore the technique, it is crucial to dispel the myths that so often prevent us from even beginning. The most common and most damaging myth is that meditation is about stopping your thoughts or clearing your mind. Many people try for a few minutes, discover that their mind is still churning with thoughts, and conclude, "I can't do it, I'm bad at this." This is like picking up a guitar for the first time, failing to play a masterpiece, and declaring yourself unmusical. The goal of meditation is not to stop thinking. You cannot stop your mind from producing thoughts any more than you can stop your heart from beating. It is what the mind does. The goal, instead, is to change your relationship to your thoughts. It is to learn how to sit on the bank of the river of thought and watch the currents flow by without feeling the compulsive need to jump in and be swept away by them. The second myth is a variation of the first. My mind is just too busy to meditate. This is the equivalent of saying, "I am too sick to go to the doctor." The fact that your mind is busy is the very reason the practice is so beneficial. Noticing how active your mind is not a sign of failure. It is the first sign of success. It is the moment of waking up and seeing the monkey for the first time. The practice is not for people whose minds are already calm. It is for the rest of us. It is the training that brings the calm. Finally, there is the myth of time. I don't have time to meditate. We live under the tyranny of the urgent, with schedules packed from morning until night. But meditation is not another burdensome task to add to your to-do list. It is an investment that pays dividends in every other moment of your day. Even 5 minutes of dedicated practice can begin to untangle the knots of stress and reactivity, allowing you to approach the rest of your day with greater clarity, patience, and effectiveness. It is not about losing time. It is about gaining your life. So, how do we begin? The practice itself is beautifully simple. It is called anapanasati, which means mindfulness of breathing. It requires no special equipment, no dogma, just you, your body, and your breath. First, find a posture. You can sit on a cushion on the floor if you are comfortable, or you can simply sit in a chair. The key is to sit with a sense of dignity. Keep your back straight, but not stiff. Imagine a string gently pulling the crown of your head toward the sky, elongating your spine. Let your shoulders relax. Rest your hands in your lap or on your knees, wherever they feel most at ease. This posture is not about being rigid. It is about being awake and present. You can either close your eyes gently or, if you prefer, Keep them slightly open, with a soft, unfocused gaze on the floor a few feet in front of you. The intention is to reduce external distraction so you can turn your attention inward. Now, bring your awareness to the physical sensation of your breathing. Don't try to change your breath or control it in any way. Simply observe it. Let it be natural. Notice the feeling of the air as it enters your nostrils, cool and dry. Feel the gentle expansion of your chest and abdomen on the in-breath, and the subtle release and softening on the out-breath. Choose one spot where the sensation is most vivid, for you perhaps the tip of the nose, or the rise and fall of your belly, and let that be your anchor. Just rest your attention there, as gently as a butterfly resting on a flower. And now, for the most important instruction of all. It is a certainty, not a possibility, that your mind will wander. Within a few seconds, it will be carried away by a thought, a memory, a sound, a plan, a worry. This is what the monkey mind does. The moment you notice this has happened, the moment you wake up from the daydream is the central moment of the practice. There is no need for criticism or frustration. The instruction is simply to acknowledge, gently and without judgment, that the mind has wandered. You might even make a soft mental note, thinking or planning. Then, with great kindness, as if you were guiding a lost puppy back home, you gently return your attention to the physical sensation of the breath. This is the entire practice. You breathe in, you breathe out, you notice the sensation. The mind wanders. You notice it has wandered. You gently guide it back, over and over again. The magic is not in achieving a state of perfect, unbroken concentration. The magic is in the return. Each time you notice your mind has drifted and you bring it back to the breath, you are performing a single repetition of a powerful mental exercise. You are weakening the habit of distraction and strengthening the muscle of focused, compassionate attention. There is a beautiful analogy for this process. Imagine you have a jar of water taken from a muddy pond. The water is murky, filled with silt and dirt. If your goal is to make the water clear, what do? You don't get a stick and stir it more vigorously. That would only make it worse. You don't try to patiently fish out each individual speck of dirt. That would be an endless and frustrating task. The wisdom lies in doing nothing at all. You simply set the jar down on a stable surface and let it be still. By its own nature, through the silent, effortless force of gravity, all the mud and silt will gradually settle to the bottom, leaving the water above it perfectly clear. Our mind is this jar of muddy water. Our agitated thoughts, our worries, our plans are the mud. Trying to fight our thoughts, to suppress them, is like stirring the jar. The practice of meditation is the simple, profound act of setting the jar down. We sit, we allow the chaos of the mind to be as it is, and by gently resting our attention on the anchor of the breath, we create the conditions for the mind's own natural clarity to emerge. We do not create the stillness, we allow it to reveal itself. The breath becomes a sanctuary, a refuge that is available to us in any moment. No matter how turbulent the external world becomes, no matter how intense the inner storm of emotion, the breath is always here, steady, rhythmic, and real. In any moment of stress or overwhelm, you can pause and connect with the feeling of just one inhalation and one exhalation. And in that simple act, you can find a small island of peace, a moment of sanity in the midst of the chaos. This formal practice of sitting is the training ground. It is where we build the muscle of awareness. But the ultimate purpose is not just to be calm on a cushion. It is to take this newfound stillness and clarity with us, off the cushion and into the fabric of our daily lives. This is the art of mindfulness. If the formal practice of meditation is like going to the gym to build the muscle of attention, then mindfulness is the art of using that muscle in the arena of daily life. It is where our practice leaves the quiet cushion and walks out into the noisy, unpredictable, and beautiful world. It is the bridge between our inner sanctuary and our outer reality. Without mindfulness, meditation can become just another form of escapism, a temporary retreat from our problems. With mindfulness, our entire life becomes the practice. The word for mindfulness in the ancient Pali language is sati, and its meaning is richer than the popular understanding of simply being in the present moment. It is possible to be in the present moment, but completely lost in thought, consumed by judgment, or swept away by emotion. Sati is a more specific and powerful quality of mind. It is a clear, unwavering, and non-judgmental awareness of what is happening, exactly as it is happening. It is the practice of meeting each moment with what is called bare attention. Let's break this down. Bare attention is like a clear, flawless mirror. It simply reflects whatever comes before it, without distortion. If a beautiful flower is held up to the mirror, it reflects the flower perfectly. If a piece of mud is held up, it reflects the mud with equal, impartial clarity. The mirror does not prefer the flower and hate the mud. It does not cling to the image of the flower when it is gone, nor does it try to push away the image of the mud. It simply shows what is there, without judgment, without commentary, without a story. Our ordinary mind is the opposite of this. It is a clouded, warped, and biased mirror. When it experiences something pleasant, it doesn't just reflect it. It adds the story. I love this. I need more of this. How can I make this last forever? When it experiences something unpleasant, it adds the story. I hate this. This is awful. How can I get rid of this as fast as possible? We rarely experience reality directly. We experience our reaction to reality, our judgment about reality. Mindfulness is the art of cleaning the mirror, of learning to see life before our own stories and preferences are projected onto it. It is the difference between thinking, "This traffic is a nightmare, my day is ruined," and observing, "The car is not moving." There is a feeling of frustration arising in my body. My heart is beating a little faster. The first is being lost in the story. The second is being awake to the reality. The most profound and life-altering gift of mindfulness is the creation of a sacred pause. For most of us, our lives are lived in a pattern of stimulus and automatic reaction. Someone says a harsh word to us. We immediately react with anger or defensiveness. We feel a flicker of boredom. We immediately reach for our phone. We see an advertisement for food. We immediately feel a pang of hunger. We are like puppets, and our habitual emotions and impulses are the strings. Mindfulness inserts a small, precious gap between the stimulus and the reaction. In that gap lies our freedom. The harsh word is spoken, stimulus. A wave of anger arises within us, the first arrow. Because we have been practicing, we can notice this anger with mindful awareness. We see it. We feel it in our body as a surge of heat, a tightness in the jaw. This is the sacred pause. We are not possessed by the anger. We are the container that holds the anger. And because we are holding it instead of being it, we can choose how to respond. We can choose to lash back out, escalating the conflict. Or we can choose to take a breath. We can choose to remain silent. We can choose to respond with a question instead of an accusation. In that space, we reclaim our power. As the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Every moment of mindfulness helps us to widen that space. This is not a grim or solemn practice. It is a path to discovering a profound sense of joy and wonder in the ordinary. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh told a story about washing the dishes. He said that when you are washing the dishes, you should be completely present washing the dishes. You should feel the warmth of the water, the smoothness of the plates, the scent of the soap. You should be aware of your hands, your breath, your posture. He pointed out that most of us wash the dishes simply to get them over with. Our minds are already on the cup of tea or the dessert that we will have afterwards. But, he warned, if we are incapable of being present and happy while washing the dishes, we will also be incapable of being present and happy while drinking the tea. While drinking the tea, our mind will already be racing ahead to the next item on our to-do list, and then the next, and the next. We will spend our entire lives rushing through the present moment, chasing a future happiness that never seems to arrive, because the future itself is always experienced as another present moment, which we will also rush through. The miracle, he taught, is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on this green earth, to be fully alive, to be fully present. The peace we seek is not waiting for us after our chores are done. It is available right now, in the heart of the most mundane activities, if we only bring our full attention to them. Mindfulness, then, is the art of waking up to our lives. It is truly tasting the food we eat, instead of mindlessly consuming it while staring at a screen. It is truly hearing the words our children or partners are saying to us, instead of just waiting for our turn to speak. It is feeling the sensation of our feet on the ground as we walk. It is a return to the senses, a return to the body, a return to the here and now. As we cultivate this quality of clear seeing, we begin to recognize our own habitual patterns. We see the monkey mind as it starts to spin a tale of anxiety. We feel the first spark of anger before it erupts into a forest fire. We notice the subtle pull of craving before it becomes an overwhelming urge. By seeing these patterns as they arise, we are no longer unconsciously controlled by them. We are seeing them for what they are: impersonal mental events, clouds passing through the vast sky of our awareness. But this clear mirror of mindfulness reflects everything without preference. It shows us the moments of joy and beauty, but it also illuminates, with just as much clarity, the things we would rather not see. It reveals our own pettiness, our envy, our fear. It brings us face to face with physical pain, with emotional hurt, and with people and situations that we find intensely disagreeable. What happens then? What do we do when mindfulness reveals a reality that we desperately want to push away? This brings us to the next crucial investigation: the powerful, toxic energy of aversion. If the practice of mindfulness is like holding up a clear mirror to reality, it is inevitable that the mirror will eventually reflect things we do not want to see. It will show us our own fear, our jealousy, our sorrow. It will reflect the pain in our bodies, the difficult people in our lives, and the injustices of the world. Our habitual, unmindful reaction to these unwanted experiences is a powerful energy, a force as strong as craving itself. It is the energy of pushing away, of rejection, of resistance. In the Buddhist tradition, this is known as aversion or dosa. It is the second of the three great poisons of the mind, the poison of number. Aversion is the other side of the coin of craving. Craving, or tanha, is the thirst that says, I need that to be happy. Aversion is the thirst that says, I need that to go away for me to be happy. Both are rooted in the same fundamental misunderstanding, that our inner peace depends on manipulating and controlling the external world and our internal states. Aversion is the engine of our struggle, the internal warrior that is constantly at war with reality, trying to reject, deny, or destroy any part of our experience that we deem unpleasant. Like craving, aversion operates on a vast spectrum. At the mildest end, it is the subtle flicker of irritation we feel when waiting in a long line, the quiet annoyance at the sound of a barking dog, the impatience that arises when traffic is slow. It is the low-grade judgment we feel towards someone's opinion or the way they dress. These small, daily doses of aversion are so common that we barely notice them, yet they act like a fine sandpaper, slowly wearing away at our potential for peace and contentment. Further along the spectrum, aversion manifests as frustration, resentment, and bitterness. It is the seething anger at a colleague who we feel has wronged us. It is the deep-seated resentment towards a family member for past hurts. It is the bitterness we carry about an injustice that we cannot change. In these states, the mind becomes a courtroom, endlessly prosecuting the past, replaying grievances, and solidifying a sense of victimhood. We are trapped, not by the original event, but by our own unwillingness to let go of our resistance to it. At its most extreme, aversion becomes rage, hatred, and the desire to inflict harm. It is a consuming fire that seeks to destroy the source of its displeasure. This intense form of aversion is not only destructive to others, it is a profound form of self-poisoning. To hold on to such intense hatred is, as the saying goes, like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The fire of our own rage is what burns us most severely. The central tragedy of aversion lies in a deep and painful paradox. What you resist persists. The more energy we pour into fighting an unwanted reality, the stronger its hold on us becomes. Imagine you are in a swimming pool and you try to hold a large beach ball underwater. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and constant pressure. Your muscles are tense, your focus is narrowed, and you are in a state of constant struggle. The moment your attention wavers, the moment your strength falters, the beach ball shoots up out of the water with even greater force than before. Our unwanted emotions are exactly like this beach ball. When we feel a wave of sadness or anxiety, and our immediate reaction is to push it down, to suppress it, to pretend it isn't there, we are holding the ball underwater. This act of suppression requires enormous psychological energy. It creates a constant, low-level tension in our body and mind. And the suppressed feeling does not simply vanish, it festers in the dark. Suppressed anger leaks out as sarcasm, passive aggression, or cynicism. Suppressed grief can turn into a chronic, low-grade depression. Suppressed fear hardens into a pervasive, objectless anxiety. Our attempt to get rid of the feeling has only succeeded in making it a permanent, shadowy resident in our psyche. We are at war with ourselves, and in such a war, there can be no victor. So if resistance is not the answer, what is the alternative? The path of wisdom does not ask us to like what is unpleasant, nor does it ask us to condone what is harmful. It simply asks us to stop fighting with what is already here. It asks us to approach our aversion with mindfulness. The first step is to recognize aversion as it arises. It is to meet the feeling with awareness, to name it softly in our own mind. This is irritation, or anger is present. This simple act of labeling creates a space. We are no longer consumed by the emotion. We are the one who is aware of the emotion. This shift in perspective is the beginning of freedom. The second step is to investigate the feeling with curiosity, specifically in the body. Instead of getting lost in the mental story, "He is so wrong. This is unfair," we gently bring our attention to the physical sensations of the emotion. Where do you feel anger in your body? Is it a fire in your stomach, a tightness in your chest, a clenching in your jaw, a surge of heat in your face? By shifting our focus from the abstract narrative to the concrete, physical sensations, we cut the fuel line that feeds the endless loop of reactive thinking. We are no longer analyzing the story of our anger. We are simply being with the raw energy of it. The third and final step is to allow the feeling to be there. This is the most radical part. We practice giving these physical sensations permission to exist without needing them to change or disappear. We breathe into the tightness in the chest. We surround the fire in the belly with a sense of spacious, compassionate awareness. We are not saying we like the feeling. We are simply ending the war against it. We are holding our own painful experience with the same kindness we might offer to a crying child. And in a great paradox, the moment we truly allow an unwanted feeling to be there without resistance, it often begins to lose its power. Its intensity softens, and it is able to move through us and pass, like a storm cloud moving through the open sky. There is an old story of a man who developed such an extreme aversion to anything he considered unclean that his life became a prison. He refused to touch doorknobs. He would not shake hands with anyone. He wiped every surface before he would touch it. His world grew smaller and smaller, defined by what he was pushing away. One day, a meal was brought to him, but he imagined that the plate was somehow contaminated. Consumed by his powerful aversion, he refused to touch it. He rejected all food that did not meet his impossible standards of purity. In the end, he starved to death, destroyed not by any external filth, but by the poison of his own powerful rejection of the ordinary, messy reality of the world. Aversion, at its root, is a refusal to be with the world as it is. It is a futile struggle that drains our life force and disconnects us from reality. The mindful path offers a different way, not to eliminate what is unpleasant, but to change our relationship to it. It is the path of meeting our struggles with courage, curiosity, and a powerful, healing compassion. We have now looked at the twin forces of craving, the pulling towards, and aversion, the pushing away. We can see how these two energies dominate our lives, keeping us in a state of constant dissatisfaction with the present moment. This deep understanding prepares us to revisit and fully grasp one of the most practical and liberating teachings of all, the ultimate tool for working with these forces in real time. The parable of the second arrow. We have journeyed deep into the territory of the mind, mapping the forces that govern our inner world. We have seen that our discontent, our dukkha, is born from the twin energies of craving and aversion, the relentless pulling toward what we want and the violent pushing away of what we do not. We have seen how mindfulness can act as a clear mirror, allowing us to witness these forces without being swept away. Now, we arrive at a teaching that distills all this wisdom into one of the most practical, profound, and immediately applicable insights on the entire path to peace. It is the parable of the second arrow, a teaching that holds the very key to unlocking the crucial difference between pain and suffering. The teaching begins with a simple, unflinching truth. In life, we will all be struck by arrows. This first arrow is the unavoidable reality of pain. It is an intrinsic part of the human condition. A first arrow can be physical, the sharp, sudden pain of an injury, the chronic ache of a recurring illness, the discomfort of hunger or exhaustion. It can be emotional, the piercing sting of a loved one's harsh words, the hollow ache of loneliness, the deep sorrow of grief when someone we love dies. It can be situational, the shock of losing a job, the shame of making a public mistake, the anxiety of financial uncertainty. These first arrows are, to a large extent, outside of our control. They are the given circumstances of an unpredictable and impermanent world. No amount of wealth, power, or positive thinking can create a life completely free from first arrows. To be alive is to be vulnerable to pain, loss, and disappointment. A path of wisdom does not promise to build an impenetrable shield that will deflect every arrow life shoots at us. Such a promise would be a fantasy. The path of wisdom is not concerned with the impossible task of avoiding the first arrow. It is concerned entirely with what we do in the moment after it strikes. For most of us, as soon as the first arrow hits, our habitual reaction is to immediately take out a bow and shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is not made of wood and stone. It is forged from the reactive thoughts and emotions of our own minds. The second arrow is our suffering. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. Let us look closely at the anatomy of this second arrow. It has many parts. The first part is judgment. The first arrow strikes, and we think, "This is terrible. This is a catastrophe. This shouldn't be happening." We instantly label the experience as wrong, bad, and unacceptable. The second part is resistance. the energy of aversion we have already explored. We think, I can't stand this feeling, I have to get rid of it. This inner struggle, this war against what is already happening, creates immense tension. The third part is personalization. We make the pain all about me. We think, why does this always happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? We turn an impersonal event of life into a personal indictment, a sign of our own failure or cosmic misfortune. This often leads to the fourth part, blame. We either blame ourselves, spiraling into self-criticism, or we blame others, getting lost in loops of resentment and righteous anger. Finally, there is catastrophizing. Our minds leap into the future, imagining the worst possible outcomes. My life is ruined. I will never be happy again. This is the end of everything. It is this volley of second arrows that causes most of our deepest and most prolonged misery. The pain of the first arrow might be sharp, but it is often fleeting. The sting of a critical comment might last for a few moments. But the suffering created by the second arrows, the obsessive replaying of the comment, the shame, the anger, the worry about what it means for our future can torment us for days, weeks, or even years. We are the ones who keep the initial wound from healing by repeatedly firing more arrows of rumination and reactivity into it. Let's ground this in a common, modern experience. Imagine you send an important email to a client or your boss, and you receive a one-sentence reply that feels curt and dismissive. The first arrow is the immediate, physical emotional sensation. It's that little lurch in your stomach, the flush of heat to your face, a feeling of being unseen or unappreciated. That is the pain. It is real. Now, watch the monkey mind grab its bow. The second arrow is fear. They're unhappy with my work. The next is self-criticism. That was a stupid email I sent. I'm not good at this. Then comes resentment. After all the work I put in, this is all I get? How rude. Then catastrophizing. I'm probably going to lose this client. My boss thinks I'm incompetent. My career is stalling. Within minutes, the simple initial sting of a short email has been magnified into a full-blown crisis of confidence and anxiety. The suffering we are experiencing has very little to do with the first arrow of the email itself, and everything to do with the volley of second arrows we have fired into our own heart. So, how do we stop? How do we learn to drop the bow? This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes our greatest ally. When the first arrow of a painful event strikes, our training allows us to introduce that sacred pause. Instead of immediately reacting with a story, we can learn to turn our attention directly to the raw sensation of the first arrow itself. The curt email arrives. The lurch in the stomach happens. The heat flushes the face. Instead of letting the mind spiral, we can bring our awareness right to those physical sensations. We can say to ourselves, there is a tightness in the abdomen. There is heat in the chest. This is what disappointment feels like in the body. We breathe with these sensations. We meet the raw energy of the pain with a curious and steady attention. We are not trying to make the feeling go away. We are not judging it as bad. We are simply allowing it to be there, holding it in a spacious awareness. By doing this, we create a circuit breaker. We interrupt the habitual chain reaction that leads from pain to suffering. We stay with the first arrow, so the second arrow never gets a chance to be fired. We are not suppressing our pain or pretending it doesn't exist. In fact, we are feeling it more completely, more cleanly than ever before, but without the toxic narrative of judgment, resistance, and fear. We are choosing to care for the original wound instead of making it worse. This is a revolutionary shift in our orientation to life. It is the understanding that while pain is an inevitable part of the human journey, suffering does not have to be. Suffering is the layer of mental and emotional reactivity that we add on top of our pain. And this layer is optional. we can learn to stop creating it. This does not mean we will become emotionless robots. It means we will become more resilient, more spacious, and more free. We will still feel the sting of life's first arrows, but they will no longer have the power to shatter our peace. The choice to not fire the second arrow is one of the most profound acts of self-compassion we can ever perform. It is a declaration of peace in the midst of our own inner turmoil. It is the wisdom that frees us from the prison of our own reactivity. But this practice of skillful non-reaction leaves us with a tender question. Once we have put down the bow, what do we do with the initial wound? How do we actively soothe the unavoidable pain of the first arrow? Not adding to the pain is a crucial first step, but the path of wisdom also offers us a balm, a medicine to apply directly to our hurts. This healing medicine is the boundless, gentle, and courageous quality of compassion. Having learned the vital skill of not firing the second arrow, we have stopped adding unnecessary suffering to our lives. We have learned to put down the bow. This is a profound act of wisdom and self-regulation, but it leaves us with a tender and essential question. What do we do with the wound from the first arrow? How do we care for the unavoidable pain that life presents? To simply not make it worse is a great accomplishment, but the path of the heart offers more than just non-reaction. It offers a medicine, a healing balm that we can apply directly to our own wounds and to the wounds of the world. This medicine is compassion. In the Pali language, the word is karuna, and it means something very specific and powerful. It is the heart's trembling in the face of suffering. It is the sincere and active wish for a being to be free from its pain. It is not just a feeling, but a deep intention, a motivation that arises when we come into contact with suffering. If mindfulness is the clear-seeing wisdom of the mind, compassion is the warm, responsive intelligence of the heart. It is important to understand what compassion is by first understanding what it is not. Compassion is not pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. It creates distance. It says, "Oh, you poor thing, how terrible your situation is," reinforcing a separation between the observer and the one who suffers. Compassion, on the other hand, meets the other on equal ground. It arises from the recognition of a shared humanity and shared vulnerability. It breaks down the walls of separation and says, "I feel with you. I am here with you in your pain." Compassion is also distinct from empathy, though they are related. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. It is a vital human capacity for connection. However, raw, unfiltered empathy can be overwhelming. If we simply absorb the pain, anger, or despair of others without a sense of grounding, we can easily fall into a state of empathic distress or burnout. We become so flooded by the other's suffering that we lose our own footing and become unable to help. Compassion includes the resonance of empathy, but it adds two crucial ingredients: wisdom and benevolent intention. It feels for the other from a place of strength and stability. It combines the heartfelt connection of "I feel with you" with the clear, wise intention of "May you be free from this suffering." It is not just a mirroring of pain, but an active aspiration for healing and release. This ability to feel for others begins in one crucial place: ourselves. The foundation of all genuine compassion is self-compassion. For many of us, especially in cultures that prize strength and self-criticism, this is the most difficult practice of all. We can be incredibly kind and forgiving to a friend who makes a mistake, but when we ourselves stumble, a harsh, relentless inner critic takes over. This inner critic is the master archer of the second arrow. It is the voice that says, "You're a failure. You're not good enough. You always get it wrong." Self-compassion is the practice of turning the quality of kindness inward. It is learning to speak to ourselves as we would speak to a beloved friend who is hurting. It involves three key elements. First, it requires mindfulness. the ability to notice our own pain without being consumed by it. We acknowledge this is a moment of suffering rather than getting lost in the drama of our own story. Second, it involves recognizing our common humanity. It is the deep understanding that failure, imperfection, and pain are not signs of our personal deficiency, but are part of the shared, universal human experience. To be human is to be flawed and to suffer. This recognition counters the isolating poison of shame, the feeling that I am the only one who feels this way. Third, it involves self-kindness. This is the active choice to be gentle, supportive, and understanding with ourselves when we are in pain, rather than being cold and judgmental. It is the conscious decision to stop firing second arrows at our own heart. Without this foundation of self-compassion, our attempts to help others can become a subtle form of escapism, a way to focus on their problems so that we do not have to face our own. There is no story that illustrates the birth of compassion more beautifully than that of a woman named Kisa Gotami, who lived at the time of the Buddha. Kisa Gotami was a young mother whose life was shattered when her only child, an infant son, died. Driven mad by a grief so powerful she could not accept its reality, she picked up her son's small body and wandered from house to house, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others ignored her, but one wise person saw her immense suffering and directed her to the Buddha, saying, "He is the great physician. He will have the medicine you seek." Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded with him to perform a miracle. The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with an ocean of calm, clear compassion. He saw her pain, and he knew that a lecture on the nature of impermanence would be meaningless to a heart so consumed by grief. So instead, he gave her a task. He said, "I can make the medicine you ask for, but to do so, I need one special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house in this village where no one has ever died." Filled with a surge of desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her journey. She went to the first house and knocked on the door. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son, but it must be from a house where death has never visited." The woman of the house replied, "You may have as many mustard seeds as you wish, but in this house, I have lost my husband." Kisa Gotami went to the next house. "Please, a mustard seed," she begged. The man at the door said, "Of course, but here, I have lost my parents." She went to house after house, and the story was always the same. "The living are few," they told her, "but the dead are many. Please do not remind us of our deepest grief." As the day wore on, a profound transformation began to take place within her. With every home she visited, she saw that her own unique, private, and unbearable agony was in fact the shared, universal sorrow of all people. The walls of her selfish grief began to crumble. Her heart, once clenched tightly around her own loss, began to open to the immense suffering of all beings. She was no longer just a mother grieving for her son. She was a human being, feeling the pulse of our common mortality. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a quiet, transformed heart. She had discovered the first noble truth for herself, not as a philosophy, but as a deep, visceral reality. Her personal pain had become the doorway to universal compassion. This is the nature of true compassion. It is not afraid to touch suffering. It is the heart's courageous and tender response to the inevitable first arrows of life. It is the antidote to the poison of judgment, because where judgment sees a bad person or a wrong situation, compassion sees a suffering being who, just like us, is simply trying to find happiness and avoid pain. It is the gentle hand that reaches out to soothe the wound, both in ourselves and in others, after we have had the wisdom to put down the bow and arrow. Compassion is the wish to relieve suffering. But what of its bright counterpart, What quality of heart do we cultivate not just to heal pain, but to actively rejoice in and wish for the well-being of all? This leads us to the radiant, sun-like practice of loving kindness. If compassion is the heart's response to the sorrow of the world, then its bright twin, its sunlit counterpart, is the practice of loving kindness. Where compassion meets pain with the wish to heal, loving kindness meets all beings with the wish for them to be well and happy. In the ancient Pali language, this quality is called Metta. It is not merely the absence of hatred or ill will, it is the active, radiant, and unconditional presence of goodwill. It is the cultivation of a boundless, friendly warmth toward ourselves and all of life. It is learning to make our own heart a safe place, a sun that radiates warmth impartially, shining on the beautiful and the broken, the friend and the foe, without preference. It is essential to distinguish Metta from our conventional ideas of love. The love we often speak of in songs and poems is usually conditional, transactional, and possessive. It is a love that says, "I love you because you are beautiful, or smart, or because you make me feel good." It is a love that says, "I will love you if you love me in return." This kind of love is deeply entangled with attachment, with craving, with the fear of loss. It can be a source of great joy, but it can also be a source of immense pain, jealousy, and despair. Metta is of a different nature altogether. It is an unconditional and boundless friendliness. It does not depend on the other person's qualities or their actions. It does not ask for anything in return. It is not a feeling we get from someone else. It is a state of heart that we consciously and patiently cultivate within ourselves. The practice of developing metta is not about forcing ourselves to feel a certain sentimental emotion. It is about planting a seed of intention and patiently watering it day after day. Some days, we may feel a genuine warmth and affection. Other days, we may feel nothing at all, simply repeating the words like a dry mantra. The practice is in the steady, faithful repetition, trusting that by tending to this intention, the flower of a kind heart will eventually bloom. The traditional method for cultivating loving kindness is a systematic guided meditation that gradually expands the circle of our goodwill. It is a practice that heals us from the inside out. The journey, as always, must begin with ourselves. It is a profound irony that for many of us, the hardest person to offer kindness to is the one in our own skin. We find it difficult to wish ourselves well, feeling that it is selfish or that we are unworthy. But without a foundation of friendliness toward ourselves, any goodwill we extend to others will be shallow and unstable. So, we begin by holding our own being in our awareness and silently offering ourselves phrases of well-wishing. The classic phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy," "May I be happy," "May I live with ease." We repeat these phrases slowly, letting the meaning, the intention, settle into our hearts. We are learning to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend. Once we have established a baseline of kindness for ourselves, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a respected person, a teacher, a mentor, or a benefactor, someone for whom it is very easy to feel gratitude and warmth. We hold their image in our mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We allow our heart to naturally overflow with goodwill toward this person who has helped us. Next, we bring to mind a dear friend or a close family member. This is often the easiest stage, as our hearts are already filled with love for them. We bathe them in the radiant energy of our well-wishing, sincerely desiring their happiness and freedom from harm. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. The next stage begins to gently stretch the muscle of the heart. We bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we see regularly, but have no strong emotional connection to the person who checks out our groceries. the barista who makes our coffee, someone we see on our daily commute. We often see these people as mere functions, not as complex human beings with their own hopes and fears. In this stage, we consciously recognize their humanity and extend the same wishes to them. Just as I wish to be happy, may you be happy too. May you be safe. May you be well. This practice begins to dissolve the artificial walls between my people and strangers. Then comes the most challenging and often the most transformative stage of the practice. We are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict or for whom we feel resentment. It is wise to start with someone only mildly difficult, not the source of our deepest trauma. The goal here is not to force a feeling of affection or to condone their harmful actions. The goal is a profound act of healing for ourselves. We recognize that this person's harmful actions almost certainly spring from their own deep suffering, their own ignorance, their own craving and aversion, and so we experiment. Can we, even for a moment, wish for them to be free from the suffering that causes them to act in this way? We might use a modified phrase. To the best of my ability in this moment, I wish for you to be free from suffering and to find true happiness. This practice is not for their benefit. It is to free ourselves from the corrosive poison of hatred and resentment. Finally, we open the circle completely. We radiate loving kindness in all directions, to all beings without exception, to our friends, to our enemies, to strangers, to humans and to animals, to all creatures, great and small, seen and unseen, near and far. We let our heart become a boundless source of goodwill, wishing for all beings everywhere to be safe, to be healthy, to be happy, and to live with ease. Consider the story of a woman named Sarah, who carried the heavy weight of betrayal. A close friend had hurt her deeply, and for years she was consumed by a righteous anger and a bitter resentment. This anger was a prison. It soured her new relationships and cast a dark shadow over her life. She began to practice loving-kindness meditation and found it comforting until she reached the stage of the difficult person. The thought of wishing her former friend well felt impossible, a betrayal of her own valid pain. For weeks, she simply sat with the resistance. Then, following a teacher's advice, she started small. She would bring the person to mind and just hold the intention, "I acknowledge you." After some time, this softened into, "I wish you peace." It was still difficult, but one day, she had a shift in perspective. She realized that her friend's actions must have come from a place of deep insecurity and unhappiness. Her practice then became, "May you be free from the confusion and pain that led you to cause harm." She realized the practice was never about letting her friend off the hook. It was about letting herself out of prison. The loving kindness was the antidote she was administering to herself, to dissolve the poison of her own resentment. It didn't erase the past, but it finally allowed her heart to heal. This is the power of Metta. It is a radical practice of softening the armor around our hearts. It is the direct antidote to fear, anger, jealousy, and ill will. It retrains our habitual responses, moving us from a default setting of suspicion and judgment to one of friendliness and open-heartedness. We begin to see the world not as a collection of threats and competitors, but as a vast community of fellow beings, all of whom, just like us, are simply searching for happiness. We have now explored the deep, internal qualities of the heart, compassion, which meets pain with a wish to heal, and loving kindness, which meets all beings with a wish for their well-being. These practices cultivate a profound inner balance and warmth. But how do we carry this inner state into our outer life? How do we navigate a world that pulls us toward extremes, extreme of frantic, pleasure-seeking indulgence on one side, and the extreme of punishing, ascetic self-denial on the other? For this, we need a path of wisdom in action. We need a path that walks skillfully between the chasms of excess. This is the noble and timeless teaching of the middle way. Having cultivated the inner qualities of the heart, learning to meet pain with compassion and all beings with loving kindness, our journey now turns outward. We must ask a fundamental question: how do we live in this world? How do we translate our inner understanding into our outer actions? The world constantly pulls us towards extremes. On one side lies the siren song of endless pleasure, distraction, and indulgence. On the other lies the harsh demand of relentless productivity, self-criticism, and burnout. The wisdom of the path we are exploring offers a way to navigate between these two perilous chasms. It is a path of profound and radical balance, a path known as the middle way. This teaching is rooted in the Buddha's own life story. He was born a prince, shielded from all forms of suffering and surrounded by every imaginable luxury. His early life was a deep dive into the first extreme, sensual indulgence. He had palaces for every season, the finest foods, music, and every pleasure at his fingertips. Yet, he discovered that this life, far from bringing lasting happiness, only created a subtle, gnawing emptiness. The constant pursuit of pleasure was exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. It was a gilded cage. Driven by his search for a deeper truth, he left his palace and threw himself into the opposite extreme. He became an ascetic, practicing severe self-mortification. Along with other seekers, he starved his body until his ribs showed like a picket fence. He held his breath until he felt his head would explode. He slept on beds of thorns. He believed that by conquering the body and denying its needs, he could liberate his spirit. But this path, too, proved to be a dead end. His mind, housed in a weak and tortured body, became too agitated and exhausted for any deep insight. He had merely traded one form of suffering for another. It was only after rejecting both of these extremes, the life of the pampered prince and the life of the pain-racked ascetic, that he made his great discovery. He realized that the path to awakening was not a war against the self, nor was it a surrender to every whim. It was a middle way, a path of balance, wisdom, and clarity that transcended both. These two extremes are not just ancient history, they are the two great traps of modern life. The extreme of sensual indulgence is the dominant message of our consumer culture. It is the relentless pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of any discomfort. It is the constant scrolling through social media for another novel hit of stimulation. It is binge-watching entire seasons of a show to numb our minds. It is using food, alcohol, or shopping as a way to escape from our feelings. It is the life of chasing the next high, the next purchase, the next experience, always believing that the next thing will finally deliver the happiness we seek. But as we have seen, this path only deepens the thirst of the hungry ghost. It leads not to satisfaction, but to addiction and a profound sense of inner emptiness. The other extreme, that of self-mortification, has a modern disguise as well. It is the gospel of hustle culture. It is the workaholism that demands we sacrifice our sleep, our health, and our relationships for the sake of career ambition. It is the relentless pressure for self-optimization, the belief that any moment of rest is a moment wasted. It is the punishing exercise regimens and extreme diets that treat the body like an enemy to be conquered. It is the harsh inner critic that drives us with a whip of self-judgment, telling us we are never doing enough, never good enough. This path does not lead to enlightenment. It leads directly to burnout, anxiety, chronic illness, and a mind too tense and exhausted to find a moment of peace. The Buddha's teaching on how to navigate between these two dead ends is beautifully captured in the story of a monk named Sona. Sona had been a wealthy and accomplished musician before joining the monastic community, and he applied the same intense perfectionism to his spiritual practice. He meditated with such ferocious, punishing zeal that he paid no attention to his body. He practiced walking meditation until his feet were raw and bleeding, leaving bloody footprints in his wake. Yet, despite his incredible effort, he felt no closer to peace. He became discouraged and thought of giving up, believing he was simply not capable of this path. The Buddha, possessing the ability to know the minds of others, understood Sona's struggle. He went to him and asked, "Sona, is it true that before you became a monk, you were skilled at playing the lute?" Sona affirmed that he was. The Buddha then continued, "Tell me, Sona, what happened if you tuned the strings of your lute too tightly?" Sona, the expert musician, replied, "Venerable sir, if the strings were too tight, they would snap, and the lute would produce no sound." "And what happened?" the Buddha asked. "If you tuned the strings too loosely?" Sona answered, "Sir, if the strings were too slack, the lute would be unplayable and would make no sound." The Buddha then asked the final, crucial question, "And what was required, Sona, to create beautiful, harmonious music?" Sona replied, "To create beautiful music, the strings had to be tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose, but tuned to an even and balanced pitch. Only then was the instrument ready to be played." The Buddha smiled gently. "In just the same way, Sona, the practice of this path is like tuning your lute. Energy that is stretched too tight leads to restlessness and agitation. Energy that is too slack leads to laziness and lethargy. You must establish a balance in your energy, a balance in your conviction, your effort, your mindfulness, and your concentration. Tune the instrument of your mind and body, not too tight and not too loose. This is the middle way. The middle way is not a weak compromise. It is not a bland 50-50 average between two poles. It is a higher, transcendent path that avoids the pitfalls of both extremes. It is the razor's edge of wisdom. It is not a fixed rule, but a dynamic, mindful balancing act that we must engage in, moment by moment. It is the intelligence to know when effort is needed and when rest is required. It is applying mindfulness to our actions. We eat not to the point of gluttony, nor do we starve ourselves, but we eat to nourish our body so it can support our practice. We work not to the point of burnout, nor do we succumb to laziness, but we engage our tasks with clarity and energy, while also honoring our need for rest and renewal. We practice not with a sense of grim, self-punishing duty, nor with a lazy indifference, but with a steady, patient, and joyful effort. The middle way is the wisdom that recognizes that our body and mind are not separate entities at war with each other. They are a single, unified instrument. A mistuned instrument cannot produce beautiful music. A mistreated body and an exhausted mind cannot realize the deep and subtle truths of liberation. This path of radical balance is the very embodiment of wisdom in action, and this naturally brings us to a deeper inquiry into the nature of action itself. If the middle way is about finding the right balance in what we do, say, and think, then what is the underlying law that governs the results of these actions? How is it that our skillful or unskillful choices create the very fabric of our lived experience? To understand this, we must now explore one of the most profound and frequently misunderstood concepts in all of Eastern thought: the universal law of cause and effect, the law of karma. Having found our footing on the path of balance, the middle way, we are now equipped to explore the very law that governs our journey. It is a law that underlies every choice we make, every word we speak, and every thought we entertain. It is perhaps one of the most widely known, yet deeply misunderstood, concepts to have emerged from Eastern philosophy. This is the law of karma. In the West, the word karma has become freighted with all sorts of baggage. We use it casually to mean fate, destiny, or a kind of cosmic revenge. We imagine a celestial scoreboard keeping track of our good and bad deeds, ready to dispense rewards and punishments. But the original teaching of karma is far simpler, more scientific, and infinitely more empowering than these popular notions. The word karma in the Pali language literally means action. Karma is not a mysterious force that happens to us. It is the energy that we ourselves put into the world. It is the universal, impersonal law of cause and effect applied to our intentional actions. The absolute key to understanding karma is a single, pivotal word: intention. The Buddha stated this with unmistakable clarity when he said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma." Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. This places the entire weight of an action not on its outcome, which we often cannot control, but on the quality of the motivation behind it. Consider this: a surgeon cuts into a person's body with a knife. A mugger also cuts into a person's body with a knife. The physical action is similar, but the intention is worlds apart. The surgeon's intention is to heal, an act rooted in compassion and care. The mugger's intention is to harm and to steal, an act rooted in greed and violence. According to the law of karma, these two acts, though physically similar, will produce vastly different results in the mind stream of the person acting. The quality of our intention is what plants the seed. We perform these intentional actions through three doors: body, speech, and mind. The actions of the body are the most obvious: an act of generosity, an act of violence, a helping hand, a clenched fist. The actions of speech are equally potent. A single word can heal or wound. We create karma when we choose to speak truthfully or to lie, when we use our words to unite people or to sow division, when we speak with kindness or with harshness. But the most subtle and powerful door of action is the mind itself. Our thoughts are not harmless, private events. Every thought is a karmic action. Every time we indulge in a mental fantasy of revenge, we are strengthening the habit of hatred within our own heart. We are planting a seed of anger. Every time we silently judge another person, we are reinforcing the habit of criticism. Conversely, every time we silently wish another person well, every time we cultivate a thought of forgiveness or generosity, we are planting a seed of kindness in the garden of our own mind. Our mind is not a passive screen upon which life unfolds. It is an active, creative force, constantly shaping the person we are becoming and the world we will inhabit. Perhaps the most helpful way to understand how karma unfolds over time is through the analogy of a farmer planting seeds. Imagine that our life, our mind stream, is a vast and fertile field. We are the farmer, and every intentional action we perform through body, speech, or mind is a seed that we plant in this field. Actions motivated by the wholesome roots of generosity, kindness, and wisdom are like planting the seeds of delicious fruits and nourishing grains. Actions motivated by the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion are like planting the seeds of thorny weeds and poisonous plants. The result of the action is called vipaka, which means fruit or ripening. Now, a farmer knows that the harvest does not come the day after the seed is planted. The seed needs time, water, soil, and sunlight. It follows its own natural rhythm. In the same way, the fruits of our karmic seeds do not always ripen immediately. This is why the law can seem confusing. We might perform a kind act and receive no immediate reward. We might say a cruel word and suffer no instant consequence. We see people who act unethically become successful, and kind people who suffer great hardship. This is because what we are experiencing in any given moment is a complex mixture of fruits ripening from countless seeds planted in the past yesterday, last year, a decade ago. We are always simultaneously harvesting old crops and planting new seeds. This understanding demolishes the popular and mistaken idea that karma is the same as fate or predestination. Fate implies that our lives are already written, that we are powerless actors in a cosmic play, merely living out a predetermined script. the law of karma teaches the exact opposite. It is the law of radical empowerment and ultimate responsibility. While we may have to experience the harvest from seeds we planted in the past, we have complete freedom over what seeds we choose to plant in this very moment. The present moment is the only point of power we have. The past is gone. The future is not yet here. But right now, we can choose. We can choose to meet a moment of frustration with a seed of patience instead of a seed of anger. We can choose to plant a seed of generosity instead of a seed of greed. We can choose a thought of forgiveness over a thought of resentment. We are not the victims of our destiny. We are the architects of it. With every conscious, intentional choice, we are shaping our future character, our future happiness, and our future suffering. We are, quite literally, creating ourselves. This understanding gives profound meaning and urgency to the practice of the middle way. Our balanced, mindful choices are not just a pleasant lifestyle preference. They are the very method by which we steer our lives in a wholesome direction. When we avoid the extremes of indulgence and self-punishment, we are creating the conditions for a mind that is stable, clear, and able to make wise, compassionate choices. We are ensuring that the field of our life is well tended, making it easier to plant good seeds. Karma, then, is simply the universe's echo. It is the natural law that our intentions reverberate back to us. It is not a system of moral judgment handed down by an external God. It is an impersonal, natural law, like the law of gravity. Wholesome intentions, like well-planted seeds, eventually and naturally lead to experiences of well-being. Unwholesome intentions, like poisonous seeds, eventually and naturally lead to experiences of pain. If this is true, if our intentional actions are truly this powerful, it begs a more subtle question. How should we act? If we perform a kind deed only to receive a good karmic reward, is the intention truly pure? This leads us to consider the quality of mind with which we engage with the world. How do we act with love, wisdom, and purpose, planting wholesome seeds without becoming attached to the harvest? How do we give freely without expecting anything in return? This requires a profound inner freedom, a quality of mind that is both engaged and spacious. This is the wisdom of non-attachment. Having explored the law of karma, we understand that our intentional actions are the seeds that create our future. This understanding naturally leads us to a more subtle and profound question about how we should act. If we perform a kind deed simply to earn a good karmic reward, or if we meditate only to achieve a state of peace, our actions, though seemingly wholesome, are still tethered to a form of craving. We are attached to a specific outcome. The path to true liberation calls for a quality of mind that can act with immense love and unwavering purpose, while simultaneously letting go of the results of that action. This is the liberating wisdom of non-attachment. Perhaps no concept in Eastern thought is more misunderstood than this one. To the Western ear, non-attachment can sound cold, aloof, and uncaring. It conjures images of an indifferent person, detached from the joys and sorrows of the world, floating through life without passion or connection. But this is a fundamental misreading of a deeply compassionate and engaged state of being. Non-attachment is not detachment. It is not indifference. It is the wisdom to love and engage with life fully, in all its messy, beautiful, and painful glory, without the frantic, fearful clinging that is the source of so much of our suffering. The difference between attachment and love is at the very heart of this teaching. We often confuse the two, believing that the intensity of our clinging is the measure of the intensity of our love. But they are, in fact, opposing forces. Attachment speaks the language of fear, possession, and control. It says, "I love you, and therefore I need you. I need you to be a certain way to make me happy. I need you to validate my existence. I am afraid of you changing or leaving me. This is not the voice of love. It is the voice of craving, the voice of the ego's insecurity. It seeks to turn a person, a job, or a status into a fixed object that we can own to fill our own inner emptiness. Love that is infused with non-attachment speaks a language of freedom, generosity, and trust. It says, I love you, and therefore I cherish your presence in my life right now, in this moment. I want you to be happy and free, and I will support you in your own journey, even if it takes you in a direction that is different from my own desires. It is a love that can hold with an open hand, rather than a clenched fist. Think of a parent's love for a child. An attached love seeks to control the child's life, forcing them to fulfill the parent's own unlived dreams. A love rooted in non-attachment gives the child the support and freedom to become who they are truly meant to be. It is a love that rejoices in the other's well-being, independent of our own agenda. This profound quality of mind does not come from forcing ourselves to be aloof. It arises naturally from the deep, experiential understanding of impermanence, or anicca. When you truly and deeply see that everything in the universe is a flowing, changing, unpredictable process, then the act of clinging to anything becomes fundamentally illogical. It is like trying to build a dam out of sand in the middle of a powerful river. It is an exhausting and futile argument with the very nature of reality. Clinging is a state of perpetual resistance. Non-attachment is a state of graceful alignment. It is the wisdom to stop fighting the river and instead learn to navigate its currents with skill and an open heart, appreciating the beauty of the water as it flows through our hands without trying to possess it. There is a powerful story that beautifully illustrates this principle in action. It is the story of a monk who was walking by a river when he saw a scorpion that had fallen in and was drowning. Moved by compassion, the monk reached down to scoop the scorpion out of the water. As he lifted it to safety, the scorpion, acting on its natural instinct, whipped its tail around and stung the monk's hand. The monk, recoiling in pain, dropped the scorpion back into the river. But a moment later, seeing the creature struggling again, he reached down once more to save it, and once more, the scorpion stung him. This happened several times. A man who was watching from the riverbank, bewildered by this scene, shouted out, "You foolish monk! Why do you keep trying to save that ungrateful creature? Can't you see it will only repay your kindness with pain?" The monk, gently cradling his swollen, stinging hand, looked at the man and calmly replied, "My friend, just because it is the nature of the scorpion to sting, does that mean I should abandon my nature, which is to save?" The wisdom in this story is immense. The monk's actions were not transactional. He was not saving the scorpion to get a reward, not even the reward of the scorpion's gratitude. His actions were not dependent on the outcome at all. His motivation was born from a deep inner principle, compassion. He was acting from his own nature, a nature he had cultivated through practice. He was able to accept the pain of the first arrow, the physical sting, without firing a single second arrow of resentment, anger, or blame toward the scorpion. He understood its nature, and he understood his own. This is the pinnacle of freedom, the ability to act from our deepest values, to plant the seeds of wholesome action, regardless of the praise or blame we receive, regardless of whether our efforts lead to a conventional success or failure. This is not a state reserved for saints and monks. We can practice this in our daily lives. At our jobs, we can pour our creativity and best efforts into a project, finding joy and meaning in the work itself, while letting go of our desperate attachment to it, resulting in a promotion or public praise. In our relationships, we can be fully present with our partners, children, and friends, loving them completely in this moment, while releasing them from the impossible burden of having to fulfill all our expectations or be the sole source of our happiness. Non-attachment is the wisdom of the open hand. A clenched fist, the fist of clinging, cannot give anything, and it cannot receive anything. An open hand is free to give and free to receive. It is the source of true resilience. When we are not desperately attached to outcomes, we are not emotionally shattered by failure or loss. We can still feel grief. We can still feel disappointment. But our core sense of well-being, our inner peace, remains intact because it was never dependent on those external things in the first place. This ability to engage so fully with the world, while simultaneously letting go of it, rests upon an even deeper insight into the nature of things. The reason we can ultimately let go is because when we look closely, we find that there is nothing truly solid or separate to hold on to. This brings us to the threshold of one of the most subtle, profound, and liberating teachings in all of Buddhism, the idea that all phenomena are empty of a separate, independent self. It is a journey into the heart of reality itself, a journey into the wisdom of emptiness. Our exploration has brought us to the edge of a profound insight. We began by learning to let go of our attachments, to hold the world with an open hand. This practice of non-attachment naturally begs the question, why is letting go possible? The answer lies in one of the most subtle, beautiful, and radical teachings on the nature of reality itself. It is the wisdom of emptiness, or in Sanskrit, shunyata. At first hearing, the word emptiness can sound frightening. It may evoke feelings of nihilism, meaninglessness, or a cold, dark void. We might imagine that it means that nothing exists and nothing matters. But this is a complete misunderstanding of a liberating and deeply positive insight. In this context, emptiness does not mean non-existence. It means empty of something. And what it is empty of is a separate, independent, permanent self. It is the teaching that nothing, not you, not me, not a tree, not a planet exists on its own, from its own side, isolated from everything else. Let's explore this with a simple object, a wooden cup. We look at it and say, this is a cup. It seems to be a solid, distinct thing. But what is it really? If we look deeply, we see the wood. The wood came from a tree. The tree needed soil, rain, sunshine, and air to grow. The tree was cut down by a lumberjack, transported, and shaped by a carpenter using tools that were themselves made by others. The idea, the very concept of a cup, is a human invention, a label we apply to this particular form. The cup is made entirely of non-cup elements. If you take away the tree, the sun, the rain, the soil, the carpenter, and the idea of a cup, there is no cup left. It is empty of a separate, inherent cupness. Its existence is completely dependent on a vast, interconnected web of causes and conditions. It is a temporary manifestation of the entire universe. This same truth applies to everything, including ourselves. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, coined a beautiful word to express this reality, into being. He would often teach this using the example of a simple sheet of paper. If we look deeply into the sheet of paper, we can see the sunshine, the cloud, and the rain that nourished the tree from which it was made. We can see the logger who cut the tree, the miller who turned it into pulp, and the person who transported it. We can see the wheat that became the bread that the logger ate for breakfast. If we continue to look, we see that the entire universe is present in this single sheet of paper. It cannot exist by itself. It interries with everything else. The paper is empty of a separate self, but it is full of the cosmos. This is not poetry. It is a description of fundamental reality, and this same vision of interbeing applies to us. You are not a separate, isolated entity. You are sitting here, breathing the air, which connects you to the trees and the phytoplankton in the ocean. The food you ate for your last meal connects you to the soil, the sun, the farmers, and the truck drivers. The thoughts and language you use were taught to you by your parents, teachers, and culture. Your very DNA is a legacy handed down through countless generations. Every part of your physical, mental, and emotional being is a product of this intricate web of interdependence. You are empty of a separate, standalone self, but you are completely full of the entire universe. A powerful metaphor for understanding this is the relationship between a wave and the ocean. Imagine you are a single wave. From your perspective, you have a distinct existence. You have a beginning as you rise from the sea, a middle as you crest, and an end as you break upon the shore. You seem separate from all the other waves. You might feel pride in your height, or envy for a larger wave, or fear as you see the shoreline approaching, which you perceive as your death. This is the perspective of the conventional self, the ego. It is a valid but limited point of view. But if, for a moment, the wave were to look deeply into its own nature, it would have a profound realization. My fundamental substance is not waveness. My fundamental substance is water. I am not separate from the ocean. I am the ocean, manifesting for a time in this particular form. In that moment of insight, the wave's fear of death would vanish. How can it die? It is water. Its form will change. It will merge back with the whole, but its essential nature is indestructible. It has always been, and will always be, part of the ocean. We are like these waves. We have our individual life forms, our unique personalities, our stories of birth and death. But our true nature, our substance, is that of the vast ocean of existence itself. The separate self is the temporary shape of the wave. Our true identity is the water. The wisdom of emptiness is this realization of our waterness. It is the understanding that our separation from each other and from the world is an illusion, a trick of perception. This insight is the ultimate antidote to the poisons of the mind. It is the final answer to our clinging. If there is nothing solid and separate to grasp, the act of clinging becomes meaningless. Who is clinging, and what is being clung to? If my well-being is intrinsically interwoven with your well-being, how can I harm you without also, in a deep sense, harming myself? How can I be consumed by envy when your success is a ripple in the same ocean of which I am a part? The teaching of emptiness does not negate our individuality. The wave is still a wave, beautiful and unique in its form, but it dissolves the alienation that comes from feeling separate. It dissolves the deep-seated fear of annihilation that drives so much of our craving and anxiety. It does not lead to a cold, meaningless void, but to a warm, boundless, and intimate connection with all of life. It is the ultimate foundation for compassion, the experiential knowledge that we are, quite literally, all in this together. Having reached this philosophical summit, having gazed into the profound, unified nature of reality, our task now is to bring this liberating view back down to earth. We must learn how to apply this wisdom in the midst of our most challenging and volatile human experiences. How does the understanding of interbeing, of non-attachment, of compassion help us when we are faced with the raw, primal, and often destructive fire of anger? How do we take this ultimate truth and use it to transform one of the mind's most potent poisons? Having journeyed inward to transform the raw energy of anger, our path now turns to the most common and fertile ground where all our practice is tested, the arena of our relationships. It is in our interactions with partners, family, friends, and colleagues that our attachments, our aversions, our compassion, and our mindfulness are truly put to the test. Our relationships can be the source of our greatest joy and our deepest suffering. The wisdom of this path teaches us to see them not as a means to an end, a way to find happiness or security, but as a profound and sacred practice in themselves, an opportunity to awaken together. We can learn to bring the qualities of a meditator into our connections with others. We can bring clarity, patience, kindness, and a spacious heart to the beautiful, complex, and often challenging dance of human relationship. This begins with two foundational practices: deep listening and loving speech. First, let us explore deep listening. We believe we are listening to each other, but most of the time, we are not. We are half listening, while the other half of our mind is formulating our rebuttal, waiting for our turn to speak, judging what is being said, or connecting it back to our own story. We listen through a thick filter of our own opinions, our past experiences with that person, and our own needs. This is not listening, it is reloading. Deep listening, on the other hand, is an act of profound generosity. It is listening with only one intention: to help the other person suffer less. To practice deep listening is to offer someone the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided, non-judgmental attention. We put down our phones, we turn away from our screens, we make gentle eye contact. We let go of our own agenda, our own need to be right or to fix the situation. We simply sit, breathe, and receive what the other person is offering. We listen not only to the words they are speaking, but to the silence between the words. We listen for the emotion that is being carried on the river of their speech. We listen for the unmet need, the unspoken pain, the first arrow that is hidden beneath their story. This simple act of being fully present for another person is one of the most healing things we can do. It can de-escalate conflict in an instant, because the deepest need of the human heart is simply to be seen and to be heard. The counterpart to deep listening is loving speech. This is the practice of using our words with the same intention, to create connection and alleviate suffering. It is speech that is both truthful and kind. Before we speak, we can learn to pause and pass our intended words through 4 gates of mindfulness. The first gate is it true? We commit to speaking honestly, without exaggeration or deception. The second gate is it kind? Truth without kindness can be a weapon. We learn to frame our truth in a way that the other person can actually hear, avoiding the language of blame and accusation. We learn to speak from our own experience, using I statements like, "I feel hurt when this happens," instead of accusatory you statements like, "You always do this." The third gate is it beneficial? Will saying this thing actually help the situation, or will it just add more fuel to the fire of conflict? Sometimes, the most loving and skillful speech is silence. The fourth and final gate is this the right time? Speaking a difficult truth to someone when they are angry, tired, or overwhelmed is not skillful. Part of loving speech is having the wisdom to wait for a moment of calm and receptivity. When our communication passes through these 4 gates, our words cease to be weapons and become instruments of healing. Beyond these 2 practices, perhaps the greatest wisdom we can bring to our relationships is the understanding of the second arrow as it applies to others. When someone we care about lashes out at us in anger, criticizes us, or acts in a way that hurts us, our immediate instinct is to take it personally. We feel the first arrow of their action, and we immediately fire a second arrow of our own, thinking, "How could they do this to me?" But the practice invites us to pause and become curious. Their outburst, their hurtful words, are their second arrows. They are a sign of their suffering. The wisdom lies in asking, what was the first arrow that struck them? What pain are they reacting to? Perhaps they are feeling scared about their job. Perhaps they are feeling disrespected or unseen. Perhaps they are living with chronic pain or a deep sense of insecurity. Seeing this does not mean we excuse their harmful behavior. We can still set clear and firm boundaries, but our response is no longer a simple, blind reaction. It comes from a place of understanding. We are responding to their underlying pain, not just their surface-level anger. This shift in perspective can transform a dynamic from a battle of wills into a potential moment of connection and healing. Consider a common family conflict. Let us imagine a mother, Maria, and her adult son, Alex. Maria is constantly expressing concern over Alex's unconventional career choice, which Alex experiences as criticism and a lack of faith in him. Their conversations always follow the same pattern. Maria voices her anxiety about his future, and Alex, feeling the sting of the first arrow, reacts defensively with his own second arrow, saying she doesn't trust him. Maria, feeling the sting of his defensive tone, fires back that she is only trying to help. They both walk away, feeling hurt, angry, and profoundly misunderstood. Now, imagine they try again, but this time with these practices. Maria decides to practice deep listening. Instead of starting with her own fears, she asks, "Alex, help me understand how it feels for you when I talk about your career." She offers him her full attention. Given this space, Alex doesn't have to be defensive. He can share the vulnerable feeling underneath. "Mom, it hurts. It feels like you think I'm going to fail and that you're disappointed in me." Now it is Alex's turn. He practices seeing his mother's arrows. He realizes that her constant concern is her second arrow, fired from a powerful first arrow of fear, a deep, parental fear for his well-being and security. It is her expression of love, tangled up in anxiety. Seeing this, his defensiveness softens. He can say, "I hear that you're scared for me, and I know it's because you love me. I need you to know that I am okay, and I also need to feel that you trust me to make my own way." The conversation is no longer a battle over who is right and who is wrong. It has become a space where two people are sharing their true feelings, their hurt, and their fear. The conflict dissolves, replaced by understanding and a renewed sense of connection. They have used their disagreement as an opportunity to awaken to each other more deeply. Our relationships are the sacred ground where we practice being human. They are not problems to be solved, but living processes to be nurtured with attention and care. By bringing the skills of deep listening, loving speech, and the wisdom of seeing the other's suffering into our daily interactions, we can transform our relationships from battlegrounds of the ego into gardens for the heart, spaces where we can both heal our own wounds and help to heal the wounds of others. But many of the pressures that strain our relationships are fueled by a larger cultural story about what it means to be successful, what a good life looks like, and what we should be striving for. To find true peace, we must now turn our attention to this powerful, pervasive, and often invisible trap of success. Our journey has led us through the intricate dynamics of our inner world and the complex dance of our relationships. We have seen that much of the conflict we experience, both internally and with others, is fueled by a set of powerful, often unconscious, beliefs about what our lives are supposed to look like. From the moment we are born, we are handed a cultural blueprint for a successful life. It tells us to strive for more money, more status, more possessions, more recognition. We are taught to climb a ladder with the promise that true happiness and contentment are waiting for us at the top. But the wisdom of this path invites us to pause, to look deeply at this blueprint, and to ask a courageous question. Is this ladder leaning against the right wall? This relentless pursuit of conventional success is the modern engine of tanha, the thirst that the Buddha identified as the root of suffering. It traps us in a cycle of striving and dissatisfaction, a state that could be called the suffering of success. We fall into the money trap, believing that a certain income will solve our problems, only to find that when we reach it, the goalpost has moved. This is the hedonic treadmill. Our desires and expectations rise along with our income, leaving us in the same state of relative dissatisfaction as before. We are taught that money can buy happiness, but it can only buy comfort and security. Beyond a certain point, its ability to generate genuine well-being plummets, yet our craving for it continues to grow. We also fall into the status trap. This is the craving to be someone, bhavatanha, in its purest form. We chase titles, accolades, and the admiration of others, hoping to solidify our sense of self-worth. But a self-worth that is dependent on external validation is fragile and precarious. It leads to a life of constant, anxious comparison, of envy for those above us and fear of those who might surpass us. We become performers in our own lives, curating an image of success while often feeling like imposters underneath. And finally, there is the achievement trap, the belief that the next goal accomplished, the next promotion earned, the next project completed, the next finish line crossed will be the one that finally allows us to rest and feel whole. But the satisfaction is always fleeting. The thrill of victory fades, and the hungry ghost of what's next soon reappears. We end up living our lives perpetually in the future, forever chasing a horizon that recedes as we approach it. The ultimate proof that this blueprint is flawed can be seen in the lives of those who have ticked every box. There are countless stories of people who have reached the pinnacle of worldly success, only to find themselves feeling empty, anxious, depressed, and profoundly lost. They climbed the ladder, only to discover it was leaning against the wrong building entirely. This path invites us to redefine success, to turn the blueprint inside out. It suggests that true wealth is not measured by our bank account or our job title, but by the quality of our inner life. From this perspective, true wealth is contentment, the radical and peaceful ability to be happy with what we have, right here and now. It is not a passive complacency, but a deep, mindful appreciation for the abundance that already exists in our lives. It is the wisdom that finally quenches the thirst of the hungry ghost. True wealth is freedom from anxiety. It is a mind that is not constantly hijacked by worries about the future or regrets about the past. It is an inner spaciousness and peace that allows us to meet life's challenges with resilience and grace. This unshakable inner peace is more precious than any worldly treasure. True wealth is the richness of meaningful connection, of deep and authentic relationships built on a foundation of presence, kindness, and compassion. And ultimately, true wealth is self-knowledge, the wisdom to understand the workings of our own mind, and the courage to live a life that is in alignment with our deepest values, not just the values of the society around us. There is an ancient Taoist parable that beautifully illustrates the folly of constantly chasing a different, better state of being. It is the story of a stonecutter. The stonecutter worked long, hard hours under the hot sun, chipping away at a great mountain of rock. He was tired, and his life felt difficult. One day, a rich merchant passed by in a magnificent carriage, and the stonecutter thought to himself, "How I wish I were that rich merchant, to have such wealth and ease." Instantly, his wish was granted, and he became the merchant. He reveled in his riches, until one day he saw a high government official pass by, carried on a sedan chair with attendants holding a large parasol to shield him from the sun. The merchant felt the sun beating down on him and thought, "The official is more powerful than I am. I wish I were that official." And his wish was granted. As the official, he enjoyed his power and respect, until he noticed that a large cloud had moved across the sky, blocking the sun that he had so recently envied. He thought, "That cloud is even more powerful than the sun. I wish I were that cloud." His wish was granted. As the cloud, he could roam the sky and obscure the sun, until a great wind came and began to blow him about helplessly. He thought, "The wind is more powerful still. I wish I were the wind." His wish was granted. As the wind, he blew with ferocious power, knocking down trees and houses until he came up against a vast, unmoving mountain of rock. He blew, and he blew, but he could not move the mountain an inch. He thought, "That mountain is the most powerful thing in existence. I wish I were that mountain." His wish was granted. He stood as the mountain, feeling immense, solid, and indestructible. He felt a deep sense of peace until he heard a strange, rhythmic noise and felt a sharp, stinging sensation at his base. Chip, chip, chip. He looked down, and he saw a tiny human figure with a hammer and a chisel, patiently and steadily chipping away at his stone foundation. It was a simple stonecutter, and in that moment, he understood. He realized that true power and purpose were not in becoming something else, but in the simple, steady, and mindful application of effort in the role he already had. The stonecutter's suffering came from his constant comparison and his craving to be elsewhere. His liberation came from returning to his own present reality and finding the inherent dignity in his own work. This is the essence of what the Buddhist path calls right livelihood. It suggests that meaning is not found in what you do, but in the quality of mind you bring to what you do. We can practice mindfulness, compassion, and presence, whether we are a CEO or a cleaner, a parent or a programmer. The path is not about changing our job, but about changing our mind. It is about finding a way to work that is not a source of stress, but a source of practice, a way to contribute to the world without losing ourselves in the process. This re-evaluation of a successful life helps us navigate our days with greater wisdom and peace. But what about the moments that utterly defy any definition of success? What about the events that feel like the ultimate, irreversible failure from a worldly point of view? We must now turn to face the most profound of life's first arrows, the universal experiences of loss, grief, and the death of those we love. How can the wisdom of this path guide and support us when our hearts are broken? Having redefined the meaning of a successful life, turning our gaze from external acquisition to internal cultivation, we must now face the one life event that seems to be the ultimate, undeniable failure from a worldly perspective. We must turn toward the most painful of all first arrows, the universal experience that no amount of wisdom or wealth can prevent, the profound loss of those we love, and the journey of grief that follows. In our modern world, we often treat grief as if it were an illness, a problem to be solved, a malfunction to be cured as quickly as possible so that we can get back to normal. Friends and family, with the best of intentions, tell us to be strong, to keep busy, to move on. But the wisdom of this path offers a radically different and deeply compassionate perspective. It teaches us that grief is not a problem to be solved. It is a sacred process to be honored. Grief is the natural, healthy, and necessary testament to the depth of our love. The pain we feel when we lose someone is directly proportionate to the joy we felt in their presence. To try to rush through our grief, to suppress it or deny it, is to dishonor the very love that is its source. The invitation, therefore, is not to avoid grief, but to learn how to grieve with an open and tender heart. It is to create a spacious and compassionate container for our sorrow, allowing it to move through us in its own time, in its own way. This is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of profound courage and love. Here, the teaching of impermanence, anicca, which can seem like a cold, abstract concept, becomes a raft in a turbulent sea. On an intellectual level, we always knew that our loved ones were impermanent, that our time together was finite. Grief is the heart's shattering, visceral encounter with this truth. The teaching of impermanence does not erase the pain, but it contextualizes it. It helps us to see that this deeply personal loss is also part of the impersonal, universal law of nature. It connects our private agony to the shared sorrow of all beings who have ever loved and lost, reminding us, as Kisa Gautami discovered, that we are not alone in our suffering. Furthermore, the law of impermanence applies not only to those we have lost, but to the feeling of grief itself. In the initial stages, grief can feel like a permanent state, a crushing weight that will never lift. But the feeling of grief, like all other feelings, is impermanent. The raw, overwhelming, acute pain of the early days will not last forever. It will change its shape. With time and mindful attention, the sharp stone of grief can be worn smooth by the flowing river of life, transformed into a softer, more gentle ache, a tender presence in the heart. This knowledge provides a glimmer of hope in our darkest moments, the quiet assurance that this too shall pass. During this process, the practice of self-compassion becomes our most essential tool. Grieving is not the time for a harsh inner critic. It is the time for radical kindness. It is the time to give ourselves permission to feel whatever arises without judgment. Sadness, anger, confusion, guilt, or even moments of unexpected peace. It is the permission to be unproductive, to be messy, to let the tears flow when they need to flow. It is the wisdom to meet our own broken heart with the same gentleness and care we would offer to a dear friend. Let us imagine the journey of a man named David, whose partner of many years, Anna, has passed away. In the first weeks, he exists in a state of numb disbelief. He keeps himself busy with arrangements, with work, with anything to avoid the gaping silence in his home. He is resisting the first arrow, trying to live as if the wound has not been inflicted. But the reality of his loss is a tide that cannot be held back. The numbness eventually gives way to overwhelming waves of pain. This is when the second arrows begin to fly. His mind is a storm of guilt. I should have been a better partner. I should have cherished our time more. It is a storm of anger. It's not fair. She was such a good person. Why her? And it is a storm of fear. I can't live without her. I will be alone forever. He is drowning not just in his grief, but in the suffering his own mind is creating around the grief. But David has a practice. He has been training for this, even without knowing it. And so, slowly, tentatively, he begins to shift his approach. When a great wave of sadness washes over him, instead of fighting it or distracting himself, he learns to stop. He sits down, closes his eyes, and gives the wave permission to move through him. He says to himself, "This is grief. This is what it feels like." He places a hand on his heart and breathes with the ache. He allows himself to cry, not as a victim, but as a man who has loved deeply. He practices self-compassion, letting go of the need to be strong, allowing himself to simply be a human being with a broken heart. Over many months, something begins to change. The waves of pain still come, but they are less frequent, less tidal. The sharp, stabbing quality of his grief begins to soften. He starts to remember Anna, not only with the pain of her absence, but with an immense, overflowing gratitude for her presence in his life. He finds himself smiling at the memory of a shared joke. He feels a warmth in his chest when he thinks of her kindness. The second arrows of guilt and anger have lost their power, replaced by a deep appreciation. His love for her has not died. It cannot die. It has simply been transformed. He begins to carry her memory, not as a heavy burden of what was lost, but as a quiet, steady light within his own heart. Her love inspires him to be more present, more kind, more appreciative of the precious, fleeting beauty of life. He learns that the heart, when broken open by grief, can heal into a shape that is larger, more resilient, and more capable of love than it was before. This is the promise of a mindful approach to grief. It is not a promise to erase pain, but a promise that our pain can become our teacher. We do not get over the loss of those we love, as if they were an obstacle to be surmounted. Instead, we learn to carry them with us, to integrate their love into the very fabric of our being. The love remains, eternal and unchanging, even as its form has been transformed by the great, universal, and heartbreaking law of impermanence. We have now faced the most personal of human sorrows. We have looked at our inner world, our relationships, our values, and our response to profound loss. We have gathered the tools of wisdom and compassion. The final question remains: how do we weave all of these threads together? How do we live this understanding, not as a series of separate lessons, but as a single, seamless, and awakened life in the heart of the modern world? This brings us to our final exploration, the nature of an everyday enlightenment. We have come to the end of a long and deep journey. We began by acknowledging the quiet discontent of modern life. We traveled through the foundational truths of existence. seeing that life is marked by a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, that our sense of a solid self is an illusion, and that all things are in a constant state of flux. We have explored the inner workings of our own minds, learning to tame the restless monkey of our thoughts and to meet the fiery energy of our anger with wisdom. We have cultivated the boundless qualities of the heart, compassion, and loving kindness. We have found a path of balance in the middle way, redefined the meaning of success, and faced the profound sorrow of loss with an open heart. After all of this, after gathering all these tools and insights, we are left with a final, culminating question. What is the ultimate goal? What is this state of enlightenment or awakening that these teachings point toward? Our culture has painted a dramatic picture of this state. We imagine a sudden flash of lightning, a permanent state of blissful ecstasy, an otherworldly perfection that removes a person from the struggles of ordinary life. We imagine a saint who no longer feels pain, a sage who is never troubled. But the wisdom of this path gently dismantles these fantasies and points towards something far more grounded, more accessible, and profoundly more useful. The great secret of the spiritual path is that its purpose is not to help us escape the world. It is to help us engage with the world more fully, more wisely, and more lovingly than ever before. It is not about building a fortress of meditative bliss and hiding inside it. That is just another form of aversion, a rejection of the life we have been given. The goal is to cultivate an inner sanctuary of peace and clarity that is so stable and so resilient that we can carry it with us out into the noisy, chaotic, and often difficult marketplace of the world. It is learning to find stillness, not by silencing the world, but by silencing the mind that reacts to the world. A sailor does not become skillful by remaining in the calm, protected harbor. A sailor becomes skillful by learning to navigate the real winds, the real waves, and the real storms of the open sea. But a skillful sailor has a steady hand on the rudder and a calm, clear mind that can read the conditions without panic. Our practice is not about avoiding the storms of life. It is about becoming that skillful sailor, able to navigate whatever weather arises with wisdom, courage, and a peaceful heart. There is a famous and beautifully simple Zen story that captures the essence of this everyday awakening. A young, enthusiastic student approaches his Zen master and asks, "Master, tell me, what was your life like before you became enlightened?" The master thinks for a moment and replies, "Before I was enlightened, I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, expecting a more dramatic answer, is a little disappointed, but he presses on. "And now, master," he asks, his eyes wide with anticipation, "what is your life like after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiles a gentle smile and replies, "After I am enlightened, I chop wood and I carry water." The profound wisdom of this story is the key to understanding the entire path. On the surface, nothing has to change. The awakened person does not suddenly levitate or stop performing the ordinary tasks of human life. They still have to prepare food, clean their home, engage in their work, and interact with other people. The transformation is not in the outer circumstances of their life. The transformation is entirely internal. It is a radical shift in the quality of awareness that they bring to each simple action. Before enlightenment, chopping wood is a chore. The mind is elsewhere. It is complaining about the ache in the back. It is thinking about what's for lunch. It is worrying about a problem from yesterday. It is fantasizing about a more pleasant activity. The body is chopping wood, but the mind is 1,000 miles away. It is mindless, distracted action. After enlightenment, chopping wood is a meditation. It is a dance with reality. There is only the feeling of the axe handle in the hands, the lifting and the swinging of the arms, the sharp sound of the blade striking the wood, the earthy scent of the pine that is released. There is a complete and joyful absorption in the present moment. The act of chopping wood is no longer a means to an end, getting firewood. The act itself, performed with total presence, is the end. It is a moment of perfect, awakened life. This means that enlightenment is not found in a distant monastery or at the end of a long and arduous quest. It is available to be found right here, in the heart of our ordinary, modern lives. Our daily commute does not have to be a source of frustration. It can be an opportunity for unscheduled meditation, a time to simply sit and be with our breath. Our work does not have to be a source of stress and burnout. We can practice bringing our full attention to each task, finding a quiet dignity in our effort, and treating our colleagues with patience and kindness. Our relationship with our technology does not have to be one of addictive slavery. We can learn to use our devices with conscious intention, choosing when to connect and when to be present in the non-digital world. The goal is not to live a different life, but to live our own life differently. It is to live with an awareness that is open, a heart that is kind, and a sense of peace that is not dependent on whether things are going our way. It is to wake up to the miracle of being alive, right in the midst of the traffic jam, the overflowing inbox, the crying child, and the pile of laundry. These things are not obstacles to our practice. They are our practice. They are the wood we have been given to chop, the water we have been given to carry. Enlightenment, therefore, is not a final destination we arrive at one glorious day. It is the continuous, moment-by-moment process of waking up. Every breath is an opportunity to come home to the present. Every human interaction is an opportunity to practice compassion. Every challenge is an opportunity to cultivate wisdom. There is no moment, no matter how mundane or how difficult, that is not the path. This understanding releases us from the pressure of striving for some perfect future state and invites us to discover the freedom, peace, and awakening that are available right now in the heart of this messy, beautiful, and perfectly ordinary life. Our journey together began with a quiet recognition of the dissatisfaction that hums beneath the surface of modern life, a sense that despite our best efforts, something is fundamentally missing. From that starting point, we ventured inward. We looked deeply into the nature of this suffering, guided by the timeless wisdom of the Four Noble Truths. We saw how our pain is woven from the threads of impermanence and our mistaken belief in a solid, separate self that we must endlessly defend. But we did not stop at diagnosis. We discovered the practical and profound tools for transformation, the stillness found in meditation, the clarity born of mindfulness, and the boundless healing power of compassion. We then learned how to carry these tools from the quiet of the cushion into the complex and often chaotic arenas of our lives, into our moments of anger, the intricacies of our relationships, and the deep sorrow of loss. The core truth we have arrived at through this exploration is this: peace is not a destination we will one day reach in the future, nor is it something that depends on our external circumstances finally arranging themselves to our liking. Peace is an internal state, a capacity of the heart and mind that can be cultivated right here, right now, in the midst of life as it is. We have learned that the meaning of our suffering is not found in the pain itself, but in the awakening it makes possible, in the compassion it can carve into our hearts, and the wisdom it can distill in our minds. The path, therefore, is not about the ambitious goal of eliminating suffering from our lives, but about the courageous and far more rewarding task of finding meaning within it. And so, we leave you with a sense of hope, clarity, and profound self-possession. You are not a helpless victim of life's unpredictable currents. You have, within you, at this very moment, the inherent capacity to meet the challenges of your life with grace, resilience, and wisdom. The journey of awakening may seem long, but it always begins with a single, simple step. It begins with one mindful breath. It begins with one moment of kindness extended to yourself in a time of difficulty. It begins with one conscious pause before you react. Life, in the end, is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And you have everything you need to live that mystery fully, starting now.